Chapter 281. The sky was clear and the sun was warm. Bailey Han accompanied Xia Dong for her prenatal checkup. He drove while she sat in the passenger seat. Along the way, she stole glances at him from time to time. She bit her red lips and loosened them. He noticed the slight hesitation between her eyebrows. He smirked. "Honey, do you have something to say to me?" Xia Dong twisted her fingers. She hadn't mentioned her illness to him since he came to Italy. Should she tell him now? Forget it, she didn't want to tell him now. He was driving. It would be dangerous if he got agitated, Xia Dong chuckled. "Actually, it's nothing." Bailey Han raised his eyebrows and didn't ask further. If she didn't want to tell him, he wouldn't force her. The doctor in charge of Xia Dong's checkup was Terence, the most famous doctor in the obstetrics and gynecology department. He was in his 40s, had blonde hair and blue eyes, and had a gentle personality. He would also be her midwife. Terence flipped through her medical records and compared the results with today's checkup results. He smiled gently. "Madam, good news. The fibroid in your uterus is slowly shrinking. If the situation develops well, the fibroid may disappear automatically." Bailey Han's eyes suddenly narrowed and his face darkened. However, because of the occasion, he didn't say anything. His hands were tightly clenched into fists. "Really?" Xia Dong was pleasantly surprised. "Then what do I need to do?" "Maintain a happy mood, exercise appropriately, and cooperate with the treatment. The rest depends on God's arrangement." Terence shrugged. There were many cases of fibroids being cured without treatment, but it was the first time he had seen a malignant tumor like Xia Dong's that had shrunk without treatment. Coming out of Terence's office, Bailey Han exuded a gloomy aura. He held Xia Dong's waist with a sullen face. She looked at him carefully, held his arm and said, "Honey, let's talk." Bailey Han stopped in his tracks and stared at her with his deep eyes. His heart was filled with all kinds of complicated emotions. In the end, he still suppressed his emotions. He replied and helped her to sit on the sofa in the living room. Xia Dong bit her lip and said in a low voice, "I had a prenatal checkup 2 months ago and found that I had uterine fibroids. Why did you hide it from me?" he asked in a low voice. She raised her head and looked at him. "Your brain was affected by a foreign object at that time, and your memory was unstable. I didn't dare to provoke you with these things." He stared at her deeply, and many images flashed through his mind. Among them, he had temporarily lost his memory and hurt her. He had even told her to abort the child and divorce. He hugged her tightly. "Honey, I'm sorry. It's all my fault." "No, it's not your fault. Don't blame yourself. Look, I'm getting better now. As long as I persevere, everything will get better." She patted his back gently. He felt sorry and guilty. He gently stroked her long hair and said in a low voice, "You didn't want to provoke me because you were sick, so you left, right?" She replied softly and chuckled. "Hubby, no matter what happens to me, you'll always be by my side, right?" "Of course." He answered firmly. "That's enough, isn't it? You'll always be by my side. We'll overcome all the difficulties together. Don't worry about the past." She raised her head and looked at him with smiling eyes. His hands on her shoulders tightened. His Adam's apple bobbed and his eyes were filled with deep affection. She understood and smiled brightly at him. "Honey, it's all thanks to you that my condition is getting better. Because you've made me feel so happy during this period of time. Thank you for making me so happy." Bailey Han knew that she wanted to use this method to dispel the guilt in his heart. The corner of his lips slowly curled up and he patted her head. "Honey, thank you." "You're welcome." Xia Dong smiled playfully and reached out to pat his head. His hair had already grown green roots and was a little prickly. Even if he had such a special hairstyle, he was still the most handsome in her eyes. "Naughty." Bailey Han's eyes were full of smiles as he scratched her perky nose. Xia Dong also pinched his nose and tilted her head to ask, "Handsome, can we go home now?" "Yes, madam." Bailey Han held her right hand like a gentleman and kissed the back of it. The two of them looked at each other and smiled faintly. He held her waist and walked out of the hospital. When they reached the entrance of the hospital, Bailey Han suddenly stopped in his tracks. Xia Dong was puzzled. What's wrong? He didn't answer but squatted down. She wanted to see what he was doing, but her bulging belly blocked her view. She felt his hands fiddling with the back of her feet for a while. She was still confused, but he had already stood up and chuckled. The shoelace is untied. She was stunned and had an indescribable feeling in her heart until he held her hand. Honey, let's go. Oh, okay. He supported her and walked step by step very seriously. She looked up at his side profile. From this angle, she could see his sharp chin and straight nose. The originally hard lines on his face looked incomparably gentle because of the smile on his lips. She suddenly felt a surge of warmth in her heart as she stared blankly at him. He suddenly turned his head and smiled helplessly. Honey, pay attention when you walk. If you want to look, I'll let you look as much as you want when we get home. She blushed and mumbled, I'm not looking at you. His eyelashes fluttered happily and he readily accepted her advice. Yeah, you're not looking at me. I'm thinking too much. But it's better to pay attention when you walk. He didn't dare to imagine how she survived when she was pregnant with the triplets. How could he not worry about a little woman who was even distracted when walking? She pursed her lips. I know. He chuckled softly. As time passed, Xia Dong's condition slowly improved, but Xiao Guai's condition wasn't optimistic. Due to the effects of the chemotherapy, her beautiful hair had all fallen out. Her pink little face had become as pale as a sheet. Her skin and mucous membranes were bleeding from time to time. Her body and limbs often had large patches of ecchymosis or blood spots. The bleeding from her gums was also more serious. Sometimes when the nurse fed her food, she would even vomit 1 or 2 mouthfuls of blood. In the sterile ward, Xiao Guai's small body lay in the middle of a pile of tubes. Her wrist was hooked up to an 4 drip, and the medicine in the medicine bottle flowed slowly into her body through the tubes. Xia Dong and Bailey Han wore protective clothing and sat by her bed. Xia Dong held her cold little hand, and tears welled up in her eyes. Mommy! She opened her eyes slightly, and a dazed smile appeared on her pale little face. Daddy, Daddy is here. Bailey Han strode forward and squatted by her bed. He wrapped his warm hands around Xia Dong's and Xiao Guai's hands. Gigai, we're here. Don't be afraid. Xiao Guai had been tormented by her illness for a long time, but she was sensible enough not to cry in front of her parents. According to the caregiver, she had once heard her sobbing quietly under the blankets at night. However, at this moment, her eyes were covered with a layer of mist. Her small nose twitched and her voice was hoarse. Mommy, Daddy, I miss brother and brother. Will I never see them again? Xia Dong's eyes were brimming with tears. She bit her lip and forced herself to hold them back. Bailey Han held their hands tightly and said gently, Gigai, you'll be fine. Daddy will bring your brothers over to visit you tomorrow, okay? Xiao Guai grunted in a nasal voice and said intermittently, Yesterday, Susan, who was in the ward next door, was pushed away. The nurse said that she went to heaven. Susan said that she wanted to celebrate my birthday with me. Boo-hoo, her tears were like beads on a broken necklace that kept falling. Susan was an 8-year-old girl who was very cute. She had leukemia, and because they couldn't find a bone marrow match, she couldn't undergo surgery and passed away yesterday. It was no wonder Xiao Guai suddenly lost control of her emotions. She was afraid that she would be like Susan, suddenly losing her breath. Xia Dong bit her fist hard as tears rolled down her face. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, and her shoulders trembled violently. She wanted to comfort Xiao Guai, but she couldn't calm her emotions. Mommy, don't cry. The baby in your stomach will cry too. Xiao Guai weakly reached out her small hand and carefully wiped away the tears beside her eyes. Bailey Han put his arm around Xia Dong's shoulders. His eyes were also shining with tears as he softly comforted the sad mother and daughter. Xia Dong's eyes were still red when they came out of Xiao Guai's ward. She sat on the sofa in the hall and calmed herself down before they walked into the doctor's office. The doctor said that Xiao Guai's condition was out of control and she needed to undergo surgery as soon as possible. It would be best if it could be done within a month. Xia Dong roughly calculated the time. She was now 7.5 months pregnant. With 3 more weeks, it would be just right for a C-section. She looked into the doctor's eyes and begged, "Doctor, no matter what, please help my daughter hold on for 3 more weeks. After 3 weeks, we can perform the surgery." Bailey Hahn said in a low voice, "Doctor, we're counting on you." The doctor nodded seriously and said, "Don't worry, I'll do my best." Bailey Hahn said, "I've already contacted my friends in the United States. They've introduced a special drug. This is a new drug that has just been developed in the United States. It's said to be very effective. I want you to give it to my daughter." He took out a photo from the United States and handed it to the doctor. After the doctor looked at the photo, he said, "I've also heard about it, but there's no such drug in Rome for the time being. Moreover, the hospital hasn't used this drug before. I don't know if it will cause side effects." Bailey Hahn said, "I've also considered this risk, so I specially invited a doctor in the United States who has used this drug before. He'll arrive in Rome in 3 days. If you take the drug under his guidance, it will be much safer. Come and see." Hongcha 866. Chapter 282. The doctor was silent for a moment and then said slowly, "Okay, I agree with your request." After leaving the hospital, Xia Dong received a call from the butler of the Castle of the Night. "Miss, Master invites you and Mr. Bailey to the castle for dinner tonight." "Is it a special occasion tonight?" "Young Master Holly is bringing a friend home." Xia Dong's eyes flickered. "Is it his girlfriend?" Holly was a famous playboy. It could be said that although he had many girlfriends, he had never brought them back to the castle and introduced them to his family. It's said to be a female friend. The butler laughed heartily and was in a good mood. Xia Dong also laughed. "Then I must go and see what kind of woman Holly likes." The butler smiled and asked, "Miss, do you need a car to pick you up?" "No, we'll drive there ourselves." The Castle of the Night was rarely so lively. Night had just fallen, and the lights in the entire manor were lit up. The bright lights enveloped the ancient castle, just like the stars surrounding the moon. Against the backdrop of the night, it looked even more luxurious and charming. The Rolls-Royce stopped outside the main gate of the castle. A servant immediately stepped forward and bent down to open the car door. Bailey Hahn supported Xia Dong as they walked up the stairs step by step and into the magnificent main hall. As soon as they reached the door of the living room, Holly greeted them with a bright smile on his handsome face and his arms open. "My dear Xia, you're so charming tonight. Holly, you're very handsome tonight too. Where's your mysterious guest?" Because of their stomachs, they couldn't hug each other as usual. Instead, they shook hands. Holly smiled and leaned to one side. Xia Dong found that there was a beauty standing behind him, an Asian beauty. This Asian woman was tall. Xia Dong was considered tall among women, but she was half a head taller than Xia Dong. Wearing high heels, she should be about 1.75 meters tall. She was wearing an ink Jiangnan Chongsam. Although it was black and white, it made people's eyes light up. The perfectly tailored plain brocade Chongsam perfectly outlined her graceful curves. Her pair of watery eyes were slightly smiling, and her delicate facial features were elegant and charming. Her fair skin was so fair that it could be broken with a flick of a finger. Under the reflection of the luxurious crystal lights, she was so elegant that she looked like a woman who had walked out of an ink painting. Holly smiled and introduced, Xia, this is my friend, Shui Ruyan. Ruyan, this is the one I mentioned to you before. She's my adopted sister, Xia Dong. The one beside her is her husband, Bailey Hahn. Shui Ruyan, as her name suggested, was as gentle and beautiful as smoke. She smiled gently, revealing 2 dimples on her lips. Hello, Mr. Bailey, Mrs. Bailey. Bailey Hahn nodded coldly in response. Xia Dong smiled. Shui Ruyan was very elegant. Her every move showed that she came from a prestigious family. Her every frown and smile had the unique charm of an Asian woman. In the dining room, the marble floor, the gorgeous chandelier, the shiny silver cutlery, the exquisite food, and the mellow red wine made the banquet look perfect. At the table, Holly was humorous and witty, making Tomac laugh heartily. Shui Ruyan didn't talk much until Holly brought the topic to calligraphy and painting. Coincidentally, Tomac was especially fond of China's calligraphy and painting. He admired her attainments in this field. Tomac didn't hide his admiration. Miss Shui, you're so young but you know so much. It's rare. Shui Ruyan smiled. I've made a fool of myself. My father is an antique dealer, so I've been interested in this field since I was young. I was influenced by what I saw and heard, and gradually learned some superficial knowledge. Tomac was interested. Can you tell me what you do for a living? She smiled. I'm an appraiser for an auction company. I'm responsible for appraising China's antiques and paintings. Very good, very good. Tomac nodded his head and looked at Holly with a smile. He praised the latter for turning over a new leaf and making such a girlfriend. After the banquet ended, everyone sat in the living room and chatted. Xia Dong discovered that the relationship between Shui Ruyan and Holly wasn't ordinary. Although they didn't do anything intimate, their eyes, expressions, and some small movements were shockingly similar. Only people with a close relationship would have this kind of similarity. Tomac also noticed it and his mood became more and more cheerful. Before Holly and Shui Ruyan left, he specially asked the housekeeper to bring an antique vase and gave it to Shui Ruyan. Shui Ruyan politely declined and he smiled. Ruyan, this vase has a good shape. You can take it and play with it. Shui Ruyan glanced at Holly. Seeing him nod his head, she accepted it and thanked him with a smile. Tomac saw this and liked her even more. She knew how to respect Holly's opinion. She was a very smart girl. Shui Ruyan politely bid farewell to everyone. Holly personally put the shawl on her shoulders. She held his arm and the two walked out of everyone's sight. Holly's car drove out of the castle. Tomac looked at Xia Dong and smiled gently. Xia, what do you think of Shui Ruyan? Xia Dong smiled. Smart, beautiful, and knows when to advance and retreat. She also has Holly in her eyes. I think she's quite good. Tomac nodded. I think so too. What do you think? Bailey Han looked indifferent. She looks too perfect. It makes her seem unreal. I don't like it. Tomac's expression froze. He coughed and said, maybe she's perfect. Bailey Han smiled. There's no perfect person in this world. More or less, everyone has some flaws. It's because of these flaws that they have flesh and blood. Tomac was touched by his words and fell into deep thought. Xia Dong smiled and said, maybe it's because I'm not perfect, so I admire those who look perfect. Let's not talk about other aspects. Miss Shui's personality is quite good. Holly should get along well with her. Tomac sighed. I hope Holly is serious this time. He's not young anymore. It's time for him to start a family. Godfather, don't worry. I think Holly has matured a lot. Xia Dong comforted him. Yeah, that's why I'm so happy about him. After chatting for a while, Xia Dong and the others said goodbye. On the way back to the villa in the car, Xia Dong sighed. Shui Ruyan is really beautiful and elegant. I'm quite supportive of her being with Holly. Bailey Han said in a serious tone, she's not as beautiful as you, and she doesn't have your elegance. Xia Dong's face darkened. Hubby, don't go against your conscience and praise me. I'm telling the truth. She's like a doll. She lacks personality. You're the best. Although Xia Dong felt sweet from his praise, she was still curious. Hubby, it seems like you don't like her. But don't all men like beautiful women? Bailey Han's eyes darkened. There's something about her that's similar to Su Yunqian. It's hard for me to like her. Xia Dong didn't expect that Su Yunqian would say something like this. She was stunned for a moment before carefully comparing them. Su Yunqian was elegant and noble while Shui Ruyan was elegant and refined. Although they were two different people, they did have some similarities. For example, they both came from rich and powerful families. They both had good manners and elegant manners. However, it was still a bit far-fetched to reject Shui Ruyan just based on these. He said again, Honey, who told you that all men like beautiful women? She came back to her senses and raised her eyebrows. But am I not a beautiful woman? Bailey Han chuckled. In my eyes, of course you're the most beautiful. However, it's not true that all men like beautiful women. If you really love someone, you only love her as a person and not her appearance. Even if she's no longer young and beautiful, my love for her won't change. He turned to look at her with a burning gaze. Her face was a little hot. She coughed. Hubby, focus on driving. He sighed. Honey, you really know how to ruin the atmosphere. She covered her mouth and snickered. She had to admit that his confession was very effective on her. Bailey Han didn't lie to Xiao Guai. He really arranged everything and brought Xiao Yi and Xiao Bao to Rome. After the Bailey family's private jet landed, the two brothers, wearing identical clothes, walked out of the plane and appeared in front of Bailey Han and Xia Dong. Dad, Mom, Xiao Bao ran over with his short legs while Xiao Yi walked over calmly and unhurriedly. Bailey Han bent down and picked them up, one on each side with a gentle smile on his face. Xia Dong also wanted to hug them, but with her big belly, she couldn't do it. She could only pat their heads and smile. Babies, are you tired? We're not tired, the two answered in unison. Xiao Bao stared curiously at Xia Dong's belly. Mom, the baby is already so big. Is it hard for you? Xia Dong smiled and ruffled his hair. It's not hard. The baby is very obedient and rarely torments me, just like the three of you. Xiao Yi said seriously, Mommy, we won't make you angry anymore. Xiao Bao nodded hurriedly. We've already deeply reflected on the matter with Godfather. This is what men should do. I'm very proud of you. Bailey Han put them down on the ground with a proud look on his face. The two brothers were embarrassed and giggled. Bailey Han chuckled. Let's go. We're going to the hospital to see Gigai. On the way to the hospital, the family of four laughed nonstop. The two little guys had stored a lot of things in their stomachs that they wanted to say to their parents. Now that they had the chance, they couldn't stop talking. Only when the car arrived at the hospital did they quiet down. Thinking about Xiao Guai's current condition, their hearts became heavy. Add, Shinmu 799. Chapter 283. Xiao Yi and Xiao Bao almost couldn't believe their eyes. Was the little girl on the hospital bed, tortured by her illness, really their adorable little sister? Their noses turned sour, and tears welled up in their eyes. They clenched their fists at the same time and bit their lower lips tightly. However, no matter how hard they tried to suppress it, they couldn't suppress the urge to cry. Their tears fell pitter-patter. Xiao Guai lay weakly on the bed. Her eyes opened slightly, revealing a look of pleasant surprise. A smile slowly bloomed on her lips. Brothery. Her voice was a little hoarse. Xiao Yi and Xiao Bao quickly ran to her side. Xiao Bao carefully stroked her pale little face and tearfully said, Gigai, it's us. We're here. Xiao Yi gently held her cold little hand. Tears glistened in her eyes as she softly said, Gigai, don't be afraid. We'll always be with you. Xiao Guai held Xiao Yi's hand tightly and smiled faintly. I'm so happy. Brother Yi, I'll get better, right? Xiao Bao nodded vigorously. Yeah. You'll definitely get better. Xiao Yi bit her lip. Gigai, we still have to go to kindergarten together, primary school together, middle school together, and university together, so you'll definitely get better. Xia Dong looked at the three children. They were all holding back their tears. They were clearly very sad, but they were still comforting each other. They were so sensible that it made her heart ache. Unknowingly, her tears had blurred her vision. Suddenly, she was pulled into a warm embrace. Bailey Han gently wiped her tears and comforted her softly. Wifey, it's okay. Gigai will definitely be fine. Don't be sad, she nodded with tears streaming down her face. Yes, she couldn't be sad or agitated. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good for the baby and it would affect her condition. She had to be strong. Bailey Han comforted his wife and children. It took him a lot of effort to calm everyone down. After Xiao Guai fell asleep, the family of four came out of the ward and waited for the elevator. When the elevator door opened, Holly and Shui Rian walked out. Shui Rian was carrying a flower basket. Xia Dong was slightly taken aback. Xiao Bao shouted excitedly, Uncle Holly. Hey Xiao Bao, when did you come to Rome? Holly hugged Xiao Bao and happily rubbed his little face. Xiao Bao was tickled by the stubble on his chin and frowned. I just arrived today. Uncle Holly, Are you here to visit Xiao Guai? Yes, I brought my friends to visit Xiao Guai. I was so excited that I forgot to introduce them. Holly placed Xiao Bao on the ground and smiled at Shui Rian. Rian, this is Xia Xia's youngest son, Xiao Bao. This is Xia Xia's eldest son, Xiao Yi. As he spoke, he patted Xiao Yi's head and smiled. Xiao Yi, you can also call me Uncle Holly. Xiao Yi nodded politely. Hello, Uncle Holly and Andy. Good girl. Shui Rian had a faint smile on her face. Her gaze lingered on Xiao Yi and Xiao Bao for a few seconds before turning to Xia Dong and Bailey Han. Mr. Bailey, Mrs. Bailey, I heard from Holly that Xiao Guai is sick, so I wanted to come and see her. I hope I won't disturb you. Xia Dong smiled. Miss Shui, thank you for your concern. But Xiao Guai just fell asleep. Shui Rian said considerately, then let's take a look outside the ward. Don't go in and wake Xiao Guai. Holly, what do you think? Holly smiled gently. Okay. Xia Dong and her family of 4 accompanied them to the door of the ward. Shui Rian looked through the glass window and saw Xiao Guai's current appearance. Her expression was a little sad and her eyes reddened. Her beautiful eyes had tears in them. When she saw Xia Dong looking at her, she smiled embarrassedly. Sorry, I forgot myself. Holly thoughtfully held her slender waist and explained to Xia Dong, Rian's younger sister died of leukemia when she was very young. When she saw Xiao Guai, she couldn't help but think of her younger sister. Shui Rian forced a smile. My younger sister was only 6 years old when she fell sick. I was only 8 years old, but I always remember how she looked when she was seriously ill. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have mentioned this. I believe that Xiao Guai will definitely get better. Xia Dong smiled kindly. It's okay, don't worry about it. Thanks to your auspicious words, Xiao Guai will definitely be fine. Shui Rian smiled faintly. Yes, Xiao Guai is so cute. God will bless her. Holly and I have something to do, so we'll take our leave first. Okay, if you have time, you can come to our house to play. Shui Rian winked playfully. Okay, it's rare to meet Chinese people in Rome. I won't be polite. Everyone went downstairs together. Bailey Han and Holly's cars drove out of the hospital's parking lot one after the other. Bailey Han's villa was only 2 streets away from the hospital. Soon, they parted ways with Holly. Holly glanced at the car that turned into another road and chuckled. Baby, why did you suddenly want to visit Xiao Guai? Shui Rian turned to look at him. 2 faint smiles bloomed on her beautiful face. Darling, I know you like Xiao Guai a lot. As your girlfriend, of course, I have to love her too. Holly smiled. You know how to please people. Shui Rian reached out to pinch his handsome face and said coquettishly, What's wrong? Don't you like her? Of course not, I like her a lot. He took the opportunity to hold her hand and kissed her fair and slender fingers. She smiled sweetly and her eyes revealed a different kind of flirtatious expression. I'll make you like her even more. Her hand landed on his thigh and gently rubbed it like a feather. His light blue eyes suddenly narrowed and his seductive thin lips curved into a mesmerizing arc. His voice was low and magnetic. Little vixen, don't ignite the fire. She chuckled softly. Her laughter was like a silver bell. He suddenly stepped on the brakes and the car stopped by the side of the road. Before she could react, he had already pulled her into his arms. His sexy thin lips kissed her lips fiercely, and their fiery breaths passed between each other. He sucked on her tongue and bit her lips. He hugged her waist with one hand and slid the other under her skirt. His nimble fingers wandered along her thigh to the inner side of her thigh. Her body was trembling from excitement and her slender fingers followed his movements and grasped his clothes tightly. Ah! His fingers teased her and she couldn't help but moan. She hugged his neck with both hands and nibbled on his earlobe gently. Her voice was so soft and seductive. Darling, not here. Their car was parked by the roadside and had already attracted the attention of the traffic police. She glanced from the corner of her eye and saw a male traffic police walking over. Although the tinted windows prevented the people outside from seeing what was happening inside, she still didn't want to put on a show in front of everyone. Holly's fingers stiffened and there was a seductive smile on his sexy lips. Darling, do you know how beautiful you look right now? I want to let others see how beautiful you are right now. But, darling, I was wrong. Her cheeks were red and her eyes were misty. She seemed to be obsessed and in pain at the same time. He kissed her red and swollen lips and said in a low voice, "Beg me." Her body trembled and she was almost defeated by his actions. Her voice was gentle and seductive. "Darling, I beg you, good girl." He kissed her lips in satisfaction and slowly pulled his fingers out. At the same time, the traffic police knocked on the car window. Holly ignored them and took out a tissue. He wiped his fingers elegantly and wiped the liquid off his fingers bit by bit. Knock knock. The knocking on the window became louder. He slowly took off his suit jacket and put it on Shui Rian's shoulders. Shui Rian blushed and used the jacket to cover the mess on her body. "Sir, please get out of the car." The traffic police knocked on the window again. Holly pressed the button and the window slowly lowered. He looked at the traffic police expressionlessly. "What's the matter?" After the traffic police saluted, he said, "Sir, you can't park here. Please drive away quickly." Holly replied indifferently. The car sped on the road at the fastest speed and finally stopped in front of a luxurious villa. Holly pulled Shui Rian out of the passenger seat and strode toward the villa. He entered a string of passwords at the entrance and the door opened automatically. When they entered the villa, they saw that it was decorated in the style of a European palace. It was simple and elegant, exuding a strong sense of luxury. After entering, he pressed her against the wall and kissed her forcefully on the lips, conquering her. Flames burst out and burned the two of them. He tore the suit jacket off her shoulders and threw it on the ground. His right hand touched her back and pulled down the zipper. She also reached out to unbutton his shirt. Just as she unbuttoned one button, he suddenly grabbed the lapel with both hands and took off his shirt. The clean and tidy living room was in a mess in an instant. His shirt was thrown at the door, her skirt was thrown on the sofa, his pants were thrown at the corner of the stairs, and her underwear was thrown in the corridor leading to the bedroom. By the time he placed her on the large, palatial bed, they were already facing each other naked, with no cover at all. He didn't give her any chance to breathe and penetrated her fiercely. She grabbed his arm tightly and moved up and down with his movements. He rubbed, teased, and tortured her constantly, but he just didn't let her be satisfied. She stared at him with wet eyes and bit her red lips to express her dissatisfaction. His lips curled up into a sinister smile. "Baby, I thought you were still thinking about him." She whimpered, "Of course not. My body and mind are all yours now." He bit her neck and panted heavily. "Prove it to me. I love you." She hugged him tightly and whispered in his ear. Her slender legs wrapped around his lean back. He growled and his movements became more and more intense. Finally, he led her to the peak. Lying in his arms, she closed her eyes and panted. Her heart was beating so fast that it almost jumped out of her chest. Only she knew that at the moment when they were walking in the clouds, she had treated him as someone else's substitute. Add Song Shu 566. Chapter 284. 2 days later, the Dr. Bailey Han invited from the United States, Louis, rushed to Rome. He brought the special medicine with him, and Xiao Guai took the medicine under his guidance. The equipment recorded the changes in her condition 24 hours a day, and the doctors and nurses were on high alert. Louis had already arranged several emergency response plans in advance. Everyone was waiting anxiously. On the first day Xiao Guai took the medicine, there were no special effects, but there were no side effects either. On the second day, the symptoms of her bleeding gums subsided. On the third day, her gums stopped bleeding and the blood spots and petechiae on her body faded. The whole family was very happy, and Louis decided to continue her medicine. A week passed, and she became more and more sleepy. She slept most of the day. After breakfast, she would go to bed early, after lunch, she would take a nap, and after dinner, she would sleep until the next day. However, after sleeping for so long, she still looked drowsy when she was awake. Sometimes, she would play with her brothers and fall asleep in Bailey Han's arms. Bailey Han was worried that it was a side effect of the special medicine. After Lewis carefully examined her, he said that other than drowsiness, there were no other side effects. After careful consideration, Bailey Han decided to let Xiao Guai continue to take the special medicine. 2 days later, Xiao Guai's condition did not continue to worsen, but she was still very weak. Every day, except for lying in the sterile ward, she could not go outside. Occasionally, when she was in good spirits, she would get out of bed, walk a few steps, and play with her 2 brothers for a while. Xia Dong was ready for the surgery. After the examination, Terence said, "Mrs. Bailey, based on your current condition, there is no need for a hysterectomy. You just need to remove the uterine fibroids when you have a C-section." Xia Dong said excitedly, "Really? That's great, Terence. Thank you very much." Bailey Han reached out and held Terence's hands tightly. "Thank you." At this moment, tears welled up in his eyes. Finally, they had overcome one obstacle, but there were still other obstacles that could be overcome. Coming out of the office, Bailey Han couldn't wait to hug Xia Dong and kiss her passionately. He didn't let go of her until her breathing became erratic. He pressed his chin against her neck and deeply breathed in her unique fragrance. His surging emotions couldn't calm down for a long time. The doctor set the time for the operation, which was 2 days later. During the video call with his family, Bailey Han relayed the news to them. They were all very nervous, but no one showed it. Everyone comforted them and prayed for them. That night, Mika Kito called. Xia, I heard from Holly that you and Xiao Guai are going to undergo surgery." Xia Dong grunted and pretended to be relaxed as she said, 2 days ago, Xiao Guai was still talking about you. You have to come and see her when you're free." The sound of the airport announcement came from the phone. Mika Kito chuckled softly. "I'm at the airport now. Xiao Guai will be able to see me tomorrow morning." Xia Dong was stunned for a moment. She was touched. "Brother Shin, you didn't have to rush over now." His voice was gentle. Xia, don't be afraid." She felt a lump in her throat. "Not afraid." He suddenly stopped in his tracks. Suzuka was walking behind Mika Kito. When she saw him stop, she also stopped in her tracks. She heard his gentle voice. "Yes, Xia is a brave girl. Of course, I'm not afraid." Suzaku was suddenly stunned. Many years ago, she was still a little girl who was afraid of thunder. One day, there was a thunderstorm and she hid in the closet. Everyone was looking for her like crazy. In the end, a little boy opened the closet and found her. She was afraid that he would laugh at her, so she preemptively said, "I'm playing hide and seek here. I'm not afraid." The little boy was surprised at first, but then he laughed and said, "I know you're a brave girl. You won't be afraid." Mika Kito's deep and cold voice came from behind her. Suzaku snapped back to her senses and realized that Mika Kito had already ended the call. He was standing 4 or 5 meters away from her and looking back at her. She hurriedly caught up with him and said, "Sorry." His gaze was deep as he said calmly, "Is there something on your mind?" She was like a child who had been caught red-handed. She pursed her lips uncomfortably. "No." He looked at her with a clear gaze. "If you have any difficulties, you can tell me." In his eyes, she had always been calm and steady. He rarely saw her in a daze. But just now, with the crowd coming and going, she was like a puppet standing there in a daze. It made him feel very strange. She was slightly stunned and smiled. "No, thank you." He grunted in a low voice. "Let's go." Xia Dong hung up the phone and was a little lost. Bailey Han hugged her from behind and whispered, "Are you thinking about him?" She leaned back in his arms and said softly, "I just feel that Brother Shin is too good to me. He's so good that it makes me feel guilty." He stroked her hair. "He did all this willingly. In his eyes, he will only be happy if you are happy." Although he was unhappy, he had to admit that he admired Mika Kito. "Yeah, I know." Because she knew, she felt even worse. She also wanted him to be happy. "Don't think about it anymore. If you think about him again, I'll be jealous." He cupped her face and pecked her lips. She licked her lips and smiled mischievously. "I can already taste it. It's sour." He raised his eyebrows. "Since you know, how are you going to comfort me? She played dumb. What should I comfort you about? His long eyelashes fluttered and he looked extremely serious. I'm jealous that you're thinking about another man. Shouldn't you comfort my hurt heart? Okay, I'll comfort you. Her eyes curved as she smiled. She pouted and kissed him loudly on the cheek. Oh, that's not enough. Put it on the account first. I'll collect interest. He narrowed his good-looking eyes and his lips curved into a mischievous smile. When Mika Kito and Suzaku arrived in Rome, it was already the next morning. They first went to the hotel they had booked to tidy up. Then, Mika Kito gave Suzaku a day off. He went to the hospital alone to visit Xia Dong and her mother. Parking the car in the underground parking lot, he quickly walked to the elevator. The elevator door opened, and a beautiful Oriental woman came out. She was exquisite and slender, with delicate facial features. When she saw him, her beautiful pupils suddenly shrank, and she revealed an elegant smile. Hello, Mr. Baiting. Mika Kito stared at her sharply. Or you? The smile on her lips became more obvious. My name is Shui Rian. You're Shui Rian. Mika Kito sized her up calmly. His eyes were deep, hiding an unreadable emotion. Shui Rian laughed softly. That's me. Holly must have mentioned me to you. I also saw your photo from him. Mika Kito said expressionlessly, What's your motive for getting close to Holly? Shui Rian looked surprised. Mr. Beiteng, what do you mean? Holly and I are lovers. I like him. Mika Kito pursed his thin lips and did not comment. Is that so? In my opinion, women get close to Holly either for his money or power. It was a well-known fact that Holly loved to play. In the past, except for physical relationships, all of his women approached him with ulterior motives. Mika Kito naturally placed Shui Rian in that category. Shui Rian did not know whether to laugh or cry. Mr. Bain, it's good that you care about Holly. But you're wrong for making wild guesses. I'm sincere about Holly. Mika Kito said indifferently, This is between you and Holly. I won't ask too much. But if you hurt Holly or the people around him, I won't let you off. Previously, when Holly introduced Shui Rian to him over the phone, he could tell that Holly loved her very much. He did not want this man, who was like his own brother, to be hurt. Shui Rian's eyes flashed with complicated emotions. She smiled and said, What you're worried about will never happen. That's good. Mika Kito walked past her, entered the elevator, and pressed the button to close the door coldly. Before Mika Kito came to the hospital, he had talked to Xia Dong on the phone. When he arrived, Bailey Han, Xia Dong, and the children were all there. Everyone was happy to see him. Of course, Bailey Han was not included. Although he admired Mika Kito, he felt a sense of crisis. On the surface, he and Mika Kito got along well, but they were still competing secretly. Mika Kito coaxed Xiao Guai to sleep. When everyone came out of the ward, Mika Kito asked Xia Dong, Was Shui Rian here just now? Xia Dong guessed that Holly had mentioned Shui Rian to him. She was not surprised and said, Yes, she was here before you came. Mika Kito's eyes darkened. Don't let her enter Xiao Guai's ward in the future. What? He said in a deep voice, I don't trust her. Xiao Bao interrupted, I don't like her either. Xia Dong ignored Xiao Bao and asked Mika Kito curiously, Brother Shin, why do you say that? Do you have a grudge against her? Mika Kito shook his head. No, it's just my intuition. Xia Dong raised her eyebrows and thought of the reason why Bailey Han didn't like Shui Rian. She couldn't help but look up at him. The corners of his lips curled up, and his expression clearly said, See, I'm not the only one who doesn't like Shui Rian. Xia Dong's mouth twitched. Okay, I'll be more careful in the future. Okay, that's right. Mika Kito patted Xia Dong's head naturally. Bailey Han's body immediately emitted a cold aura, and the temperature around him suddenly dropped below 0. His sharp eyes were like knives as he stared fiercely at Mika Kito. Mika Kito ignored him. Xia Dong's forehead was covered in cold sweat. She quickly laughed dryly and tilted her head to avoid Mika Kito's hand. Little Treasure and Little Wingsy looked at each other and giggled. Their father looked really cute when he was jealous. He looked like a cat with its fur standing on end. His fur was standing on endo? Oh, after leaving the hospital, Mika Kito called Suzaku, investigate a person. Her name is Shue Ryan. Welfare, Song Shu 566. Chapter 285. It was a very important day. Terence was going to perform a C-section on Xia Dong. After removing the fetus, he would immediately perform a fibroid removal operation. At the same time, Xiao Guai's attending doctor would extract the newborn's umbilical cord blood and perform the operation on Xiao Guai in the operating theater on a different floor of the same hospital. Everything was ready in the operating theater. Xia Dong lay on the surgical trolley while Bailey Han and Mika Kito stood on either side of the trolley. Bailey Han held her hand tightly and said gently, "Honey, don't be afraid. I'll be right here with you." His palms were wet and sweaty as he held her hand so tightly. In fact, he was even more nervous and afraid than she was. However, he hid all his negative emotions and tried his best to comfort and encourage her. Xia Dong held his hand tightly and smiled. "Honey, don't be nervous. The baby and I will be fine. Xiao Guai will be fine too." He nodded heavily. "Yes, you'll be fine." Xia Dong grinned and turned her head slowly to look at Mika Kito. Mika Kito stroked her sweat-soaked hair and said in a deep voice, Xia, don't worry. We're all here." "Yes, Brother Shen. Thank you." She smiled at him gratefully. It was almost time. The nurse reminded them kindly, the patient should be pushed into the operating theater. "Please make way." Bailey Han and Mika Kito reluctantly let go of Xia Dong. They stood rooted to the ground and watched as the nurse pushed Xia Dong into the operating theater. The door to the operating theater slammed shut and their hearts skipped a beat. The two of them sat upright on the sofa and waited. Their faces were expressionless, but their palms were sweating. In the delivery room next to the operating room, there was a pregnant woman who gave birth naturally. Before Xia Dong entered the operating room, she had already been screaming. It had been an hour since Xia Dong had entered the operating room, but she still hadn't stopped screaming. Hearing this, Bailey Han broke out in cold sweat. The veins on Bailey Han's forehead bulged. Mika Kito pressed her hands tightly on her legs. Both of them stared anxiously at the operating room. Wah-wah. Half an hour later, in the empty corridor, there was suddenly the sound of a baby crying. The two of them suddenly jumped up and ran towards the operating room. Before they arrived, the door of the delivery room beside the operating room suddenly opened. Nurse miscarried a baby and walked out with a smile on her face. "Mr. Smith, congratulations. Your wife has given birth to a little princess." A blond man with blue eyes rushed over at the speed of a rocket. He murmured excitedly, God bless, my dear child." Bailey Han and Mika Kito froze in their tracks. After the ecstasy, their hearts turned cold as if they had been doused with cold water. They looked at each other and quietly withdrew their gazes. They decided not to return to the sofa and stood at the door of the operating theater to wait. For the first time, Bailey Han deeply understood what it meant to live like a year and what it meant to suffer. He turned to look at Mika Kito and asked in a hoarse voice, 5 years ago, when Xia gave birth to Xiao Bao and the others, were you the one who was with her the whole time? Yes, Mika Kito said softly. She gave birth naturally. She was in labor for more than 10 hours. The pain she suffered at the time was similar to when she was addicted to drugs. After she gave birth, she fainted from the pain. As she recalled the past, Mika Kito's eyes were filled with deep sorrow. Bailey Han's heart also ached with every word he said. He clenched his fists tightly. He almost didn't dare to imagine how she looked when she was sweating profusely and losing control during labor. He was so upset and regretful that he wasn't by her side at that critical moment. Wah-wah-wah. Finally, the baby's cries came from the operating theater. Bailey Han trembled all over. The nurse opened the door of the operating theater and carried the baby out. She smiled and said, "It's a little princess. Mr. Bailey, congratulations." Bailey Han did not look at the baby. He asked anxiously, "How is my wife?" The operation was very successful. The fibroid has been removed. Now we will send the baby to the nursery. The baby's umbilical cord blood will also be sent to the operating theater on the 12th floor. The 12th floor was the floor where Xiao Guai was. Next, Xiao Guai would undergo the umbilical cord blood transplant operation. Bailey Han was relieved. "Nurse miss, let me hold the baby." The nurse smiled and handed the baby to him. He took the baby with trembling hands. His movements were so stiff that he did not even know where to put his hands. The baby was so small. Her face was wrinkled, her skin was red, and her eyes were tightly shut. She looked very ugly. His heart was filled with this little guy. Bailey Han wanted to laugh, but he could not control the tears in his eyes. As a clean freak, he did not mind that the baby had just been taken out of the womb. He lowered his head and kissed the baby's little forehead. His voice was hoarse. "Baby, I'm daddy." Mika Keto also hugged the baby. Her mood was extremely complicated. The nurse took the baby to the nursery. Bailey Han watched her go reluctantly. The doctor was stitching up the wound in the operating theater. After more than half an hour, he let Bailey Han and the others in. He saw the bloody sheet in the nurse's hands and suddenly shivered. Xia Dong was still unconscious because of the anesthetic. Her face was as pale as paper. Bailey Han bent down and kissed her sweat-dampened forehead. He said hoarsely, "Honey, you've suffered." He suddenly turned his head and covered his face. His shoulders were trembling violently. Mika Keto looked at him, and then looked deeply at Xia Dong. She left the operating theater silently. Tears flowed down through his fingers. Bailey Han tried his best to control his emotions. After a few seconds, his rapidly heaving chest calmed down. He wiped away his tears, turned around, and held Xia Dong's hands tightly. After more than 10 minutes, the nurse pushed Xia Dong into the ward. Bailey Han refused the nurse's help. He got warm water and personally wiped her face. After covering her with the quilt, he kissed her forehead and asked the nurse to come in. He went to the 12th floor to visit Xiao Guai. Xiao Guai was lying on the surgical trolley, waiting for the operating theater to be ready. Mika Kito's eyes were smiling. She said something softly to her. Her clear eyes were filled with surprise. She asked softly, "What happened next?" "What happened next?" It turned out that Mika Keto was telling her a fairy tale. Bailey Han smiled and walked over to them quickly. "Daddy." Xiao Guai's eyes lit up when she saw him. "Uncle Shen said that Mommy gave birth to a little sister. Is that true?" Bailey Han smiled gently. "It's true. Gigai will be an older sister in the future." "That's great. I'm an older sister. I'll definitely treat my little sister well." Although Xiao Guai was weak, she was in good spirits. She grinned happily. Bailey Han patted her head and said gently, "Gigai, you'll be entering the operating theater soon. Don't be afraid. Daddy and Uncle Shen are here." "I'm not afraid. Uncle Shen said that I'll just be sleeping inside. When I wake up, the illness will be gone." He held her soft little hand. "When you wake up, Daddy will take you to see your little sister." Yes. That's great." When the nurse pushed Xiao Guai into the operating theater, she smiled and waved at Bailey Han and Mika Keto. "Daddy, Uncle Shen, see you later." "See you later," the two men said in unison and smiled at the same time. The operation had been going on for 8 hours. During this time, Bailey Han went upstairs to visit Xia Dong 3 times. On the 3rd time, Xia Dong woke up and fed Xiaobao her first mouthful of breast milk. She missed Xiao Guai very much. Bailey Han comforted her for a long time and coaxed her to sleep. Then he went downstairs to wait for the operation to end. During this time, Holly came over and asked them to eat. He waited here, but Bailey Han and Mika Keto declined. They had no appetite. Holly frowned and ordered takeout. "If you two don't eat, how will you have the strength to wait for Xiao Guai to come out? Don't wait for her to come out and collapse again. Quick, eat something." Holly stuffed 2 lunchboxes into their hands and pointed to the hall not far away. "There are tables and chairs there. Go there and eat before coming back. I'll wait here." They forced themselves to eat something. After waiting for more than 2 hours, the door of the operating theater finally opened. "Doctor, how is my daughter?" Bailey Han greeted him nervously. Mika, Kito, and Holly followed closely behind. The doctor took off his mask and smiled. Don't worry. The patient's operation was very successful. Thank you. The three of them thanked him profusely. The problem that had troubled them for a long time could finally be resolved. The nurse pushed Xiao Guai out of the operating theater. Bailey Han and the others followed her into the ward. After confirming that Xiao Guai was fine, they called the nurse to take care of Xiao Guai. Then they got up and left. It was already past 1 o'clock in the morning. Mika Kito returned to the hotel, Holly returned to his villa, and Bailey Han went upstairs while calling his family in China to let them know that he was safe. Xia Dong was a light sleeper. Just as Bailey Han walked to her bed, she opened her eyes. Is the operation over? Bailey Han's brows relaxed and he smiled gently. It's over. The operation was very successful. Honey, you can rest now. Xia Dong raised her hand and caressed his face. Her heart ached as she said, Honey, it's been hard on you today. He had been anxiously waiting for 2 operations. He must be very tired now. He held her hand and rubbed his cheek against it. He whispered, This little bit of hard work is nothing compared to what you've suffered. Honey, now that the anesthetic has worn off, does the wound hurt? She shook her head. Actually, it doesn't hurt that much. It was such a long wound. How could it not hurt? She just didn't want him to worry. How could he not understand? His heart ached as he hugged her. He was very careful not to touch her wound. His voice was hoarse. Silly girl, if it hurts, tell me. Don't force yourself. I'm fine. I'm really fine. Xia Dong patted his back gently. It's still early. You should rest for a while. She patted the spot beside her and smiled gently. The bed is very wide. You can sleep with me. Okay. He kissed her forehead. Attention, Hongcha 866. Chapter 286. Honey, you're awake. Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Xia Dong opened her eyes and saw Bailey Han's familiar face. His gaze was gentle, and his fingers were gently tidying her hair by her ears. She smiled. No, I'm much better now. He kissed her forehead. The doctor said that you can eat some semi-liquid food now. I asked Marlene to make crucian carp soup. It'll be sent over in 20 minutes. If you're hungry, bear with it for a while. But she stared at his bloodshot eyes and caressed his clean-shaven chin. Her heart ached as she asked, You woke up very early? Why didn't you sleep a little longer? He chuckled softly. I can't sleep whenever I think about how we have a baby and how Xiao Guai's surgery was a success. Silly. She rubbed her face against his, feeling a little touched. He hugged her tightly and whispered, I've already gone downstairs to see Xiao Guai. She's sleeping very soundly. I've also gone to the nursery to see the baby, but there are too many Xiao Baos in there. It's too far away, so I couldn't find our daughter. Xia Dong smiled. We'll see her soon. The nurse will bring her over to breastfeed later. Xiao Yi and Xiao Bao are also clamoring to see the baby. They'll be coming over with Marlene. Okay. Bailey Han got out of bed and straightened his shirt. Honey, the doctor said that you can get out of bed and move around for 6 hours after the surgery to prevent the intestines from sticking together. I'll help you get out of bed and walk around. If you feel uncomfortable, you can tell me. Xia Dong nodded. With his help, she moved her legs and stood on the ground little by little. It was a simple movement, but it inevitably affected her wound. She gritted her teeth and endured it without crying out in pain. Does it hurt a lot? Can you endure it? Bailey Han held her waist and observed her expression nervously. She forced a smile. It hurts a little, but I can endure it. Come on, slow down. Let's walk a few steps less. Don't force yourself. Although Bailey Han felt sorry for her suffering, he still steeled his heart and helped her to continue walking. Otherwise, she would suffer even more if her intestines were to stick together or form a blood clot. He put her arm on his shoulder and let her center of gravity lean on him. This way, when she walked, the weight she had to bear would be greatly reduced, and the pain from the wound would also be reduced by a lot. After walking for more than 10 steps, he stopped. Honey, let's stop here for now. Let's rest for a while. We'll continue in a few hours. Xia Dong looked at the sofa in front of her. Hubby, let's go to the sofa. There are at least 15 more steps. Can you hold on? She smiled at him. I can. Trust me, I won't force myself. Okay. He held her arm tightly. Tell me if you feel uncomfortable. Okay. By the time he helped her to the sofa, her forehead was already covered in sweat. He helped her to sit on the sofa and got some hot water from the bathroom. He knelt in front of her on one knee and helped her wipe her cheeks. Then he brought over a toothbrush and a toothbrush. The cup was filled with hot water and the toothbrush had already been squeezed with toothpaste. He placed the spittoon between her legs. Okay, you can brush your teeth now. His attentive care warmed her heart. After washing up, he bent down and carefully carried her back to the bed. After a while, Marlene brought over a bowl of crucian carp soup and 2 children. The children were very sensible. Knowing that their mommy had just finished surgery, they didn't make any noise at all and quietly lay by the bed. Bailey Han took the bowl of fish soup that Marlene had served and gently stirred it for a while. When the soup wasn't too hot, he scooped a spoonful and fed it to Xia Dong. After drinking the soup, Bailey Han wiped the corners of her mouth with a tissue. The nurse walked in with the baby in her arms. Mrs. Bailey, the baby is awake. You can feed the baby now. Okay, sorry to trouble you. Bailey Han got up and took the baby. Xiao Bao went forward and blinked curiously. Wow, is this a little girl? Why is she so wrinkled? She's so ugly. She doesn't look like us at all. Xiao Yi also went forward and touched the baby's small cheeks. She said maturely, Idiot, babies are all like this when they're born. They'll look better in a month. Xiao Bao snorted. Are you showing off that you checked the information last night? Xiao Yi's face was fierce. So what if I am? Do you have a problem with that? Hey, you two. Xia Dong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Why do you two always like to quarrel when you're together? Bailey Han's attention was on his little daughter. He raised his eyebrows carelessly. It's normal for boys to quarrel. Baby girl, you can't be like your brothers in the future. He gently swung his arms and coaxed his daughter. His movements looked very skillful and were completely different from the stiff posture he had last night. Xia Dong was very surprised. Honey, you seem to be very good at carrying the baby. Bailey Han proudly raised his eyebrows. Of course. Before you woke up this morning, I held the pillow and practiced for more than an hour. Xiao Yi and Xiao Bao burst into laughter. Xia Dong couldn't help but laugh when she imagined Bailey Han holding the pillow and humming a lullaby. Bailey Han didn't realize that he was being mocked at all. He said calmly, Mother, the baby is hungry. Hurry up and feed her. Oh. Honey, take Xiao Yi and Xiao Bao out first. Oh, she almost forgot that her daughter was still hungry. Bailey Han placed the baby in her arms, then patted Xiao Yi and Xiao Bao's heads. He held their little hands and walked out of the ward. The 3 of them sat on the sofa in the corridor. Xiao Bao's 2 short legs swung in front and back. Xiao Yi supported her head with one hand and had a serious expression on her face. It was as if she was thinking about some philosophy of life. Xiao Yi suddenly turned her head. She puffed up her cheeks and looked seriously at Bailey Han. Daddy, has the little sister been named? Xiao Bao leaned over and blinked her beautiful eyes. You're called Bailey Yi, I'm called Bailey Bao. Gigai is called Bailey Guai, and the little sister is called Bailey Bei, okay? Xiao Yi bluntly rejected his suggestion. Bei Bei? It doesn't sound nice. It's like a puppy's name. Xiao Bao said unhappily, Hey, what do you mean? Are you discriminating against my and Gigai's names? The name, Bei Bei, is obviously based on my and Gigai's names. Xiao Yi raised her chin. If it doesn't sound nice, then it doesn't sound nice. Why would I lie and say it sounds nice? Bailey Han was a little speechless. He raised his hand and knocked on the 2 brats' foreheads. Lower your voices. This is the hospital. Humph. Xiao Yi and Xiao Bao crossed their arms at the same time. They glared at each other unhappily and turned their heads to ignore each other. Bailey Han shook his head in amusement. Actually, your mommy and I have already thought of a name. Her nickname will be Hai Hai, which means hope. We'll let Grandpa, grandma, and great-grandma decide on her proper name. Hi. The two brats turned their heads at the same time. They puffed up their cheeks and repeated it a few times. It was quite smooth and sounded beautiful. Most importantly, it had a good meaning. The little sister carried the hope of Gigai's life and came to the human world under everyone's expectations. The name Hi was very suitable. Baileyhan smiled. Hi. From now on, your little sister will be called Hi. After drinking milk, little Hi fell asleep again. She was small and curled up in Xiaodong's arms. Her heart was unbelievably soft. The nurse was about to send little Hi back to the nursery. Xiao Yi and Xiao Bao touched her little face reluctantly. Xiao Guai had also woken up. The two little guys ran downstairs to accompany her. Baileyhan was worried that Xiaodong would be bored, so he came back after staying in Xiao Guai's ward for a while. He lay down beside her and held her in his arms. He took out a thick book from the bedside table. Xiaodong glanced at the two words, "The Book of Songs," on the cover and couldn't stop laughing. Hubby, you're so special. Other people hold Tagore or Shakespeare's poetry books for romance. You're so good. You took out the Book of Songs. Baileyhan stroked her long hair and raised his eyebrows with a smile. Honey, don't be so foreign. The precious cultural heritage left by our ancestors is much more meaningful than those foreign poems. Xiaodong blinked and teased, Yes. Teacher Bailey is right. This student will remember it. Baileyhan found it funny and stroked her hair hard. His voice was very pleasant to the ears. It was sexy and mellow, just like red wine. The more one tasted it, the more delicious it was. It left a lasting aftertaste. The reeds are green, and the white dew is frost. The so-called lover is on the other side of the water. She lay on his chest and narrowed her eyes. Listening to him read the poems in a low voice, she actually had the illusion that they had traveled through 1,000 years. They had walked through the long river of history hand in hand, walked through the ancient Bluestone Road, and walked through countless spring, summer, autumn, and winter. It was a wonderful feeling. She couldn't help but hug him tighter, and there was a sweet and demure smile on her lips. Baileyhan gently stroked her long hair as he read aloud in a low voice. From time to time, he would lower his head to look at her. When he saw that she had closed her eyes and was sleeping peacefully with a smile on her face, he lowered his voice and read another 2 poems. Only when he heard her steady breathing did he gently close the book and put it aside. He pulled the blanket over her and looked at her sleeping face. He gently stroked her hair, and his heart was calm and satisfied. This was his wife who had given birth to his children. This was his wife who would accompany him for the rest of his life. Life was like this, so what was there to be dissatisfied with? Xiaodong slept for about an hour. When she woke up, she found herself still in Baileyhan's embrace. Looking up, she saw that he had already fallen into a deep sleep. Looking at the faint green under his eyes, she felt pity for him. He had worked hard the whole day yesterday and only slept for 4 to 5 hours last night. How could he not be tired? She knew that he was a light sleeper, so even if she woke up, she didn't move. She was afraid of waking him up. She quietly lay on her stomach and stared at his handsome face. The more she looked, the more she felt that he was really good-looking. Oh, God, she was really infatuated. Knock knock. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Xiaodong frowned and looked up again. Baileyhan had indeed been woken up. He smiled, stroked her head and said loudly, "Come in." Xia. The person who opened the door and walked in was actually Bai Jinxiu. She was even dragging a suitcase in her hand. Attention, Xinwu 799. Chapter 287. Xiaodong was surprised. Mom, why are you here? Mom, why didn't you tell me you were coming? Baileyhan carefully carried Xiaodong to the side, stood up from the bed, and straightened his shirt. Bai Jinxiu was all smiles. Didn't I want to give you a surprise? Baileyhan teased, there's no surprise, but there's a shock. Bai Jinxiu reached out and pinched Baileyhan's face. She smiled and said, Xia, is this still my son? He actually knows how to joke. Mom, Baileyhan sounded helpless. Xiaodong covered her mouth and laughed. Mom, don't tease Ahan anymore. Ahan is thin-skinned. Look, his face is red. Bailey Han sounded even more helpless. How am I blushing? Okay, I won't tease you anymore. Bai Jinxiu patted him on the shoulder and motioned for him to lower his head. Let Mom see your wound. It's all healed. There's nothing to see. Even so, he still lowered his head. His new hair had grown very well and had already covered the wound. Bai Jinxiu carefully fiddled with his hair with her fingers. A very long scar was hidden under the roots of his hair. She gently stroked the scar and her heart ached. Mom, it doesn't hurt anymore. Don't look. Bailey Han felt her fingers trembling, so he took her hand down and straightened his body. Bai Jinxiu wiped the corners of her eyes and smiled. Xia, how are you feeling now? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Xiaodong smiled and said, Mom, I'm fine. It's just that the wound still hurts a little, but it'll get better soon. Bai Jinxiu sat beside her and patted the back of her hand. She sighed and said, That's good. We heard last night that you gave birth to a daughter, and Xiao Guai's surgery was very successful. The whole family was overjoyed. Especially your grandmother. She wanted to come to Rome with me. Your father and Xiaojing also wanted to come, but they were too busy with the company. So they sent me as their representative to take good care of you. Xiaodong was very touched. Thank you. I've made you worry. After Su Yunxian's true colors were exposed, Bai Jinxiu's feelings for Xiaodong were resolved. She held Xiaodong's hand and smiled sincerely. Silly girl, what are you talking about? You're the hero of our family now. Whatever you want to eat or need, just tell me. I'm here to take care of you. It felt good to have a harmonious family. Bailey Han smiled. Mom, you must be tired after coming all the way here. Take a rest first. I'll take care of Xia. Bai Jinxiu glared at him. You're a man. Do you know how to take care of people? For the first time, Bailey Han showed an aggrieved expression. Mom, ask Xia if I'm taking good care of her. Xiaodong snickered. Mom, Ahan is very good at taking care of people. He's taking good care of me. Bai Jinxiu looked at Bailey Han in surprise. She realized that her son's personality had changed a lot since he came to Rome. He was no longer the cold-faced person he used to be. She naturally attributed his change to Xiaodong, and she liked Xiaodong even more. Bai Jinxiu's smile deepened. She sighed and said, Mom is relieved to see that you two are so close. Husband and wife should be like this. Care for each other, understand each other, and support each other. At the end, her eyes were a little red. Bailey Han's thin lips were tightly pursed. After a long silence, he asked slowly, Mom, are you and Dad okay? Bai Jinxiu wiped the corners of her eyes and forced a smile. He's changed a lot since he came back from Rome. He rarely goes to that woman's place and treats me well. But after all, it's been so many years. It's impossible for him not to contact me at all. Xiaodong did not know how to comfort her. After all, it was not appropriate for her to intervene in the problems between her father-in-law and mother-in-law. She quietly poked Bailey Han's arm. He pursed his lips, took a tissue, and handed it to Bai Jinxiu. He said in a deep voice, Mom, one day, Dad will understand what's most important to him. Give him some time. Bai Jinxiu took the tissue and wiped the corners of her eyes. She murmured, Anyway, it's been so many years. I don't care anymore. She realized that it was not good to talk about this in front of her daughter-in-law and son. She coughed and smiled. Which ward is Xiao Guai in? I'll go and see her. Mom, I'll go with you. Bailey Han stroked Xiaodong's hair. Honey, take a rest. Mom, don't book a hotel. Just stay at our house. Send Mom's luggage home later. He smiled. Don't worry. I'll arrange it. Bai Jinxiu's suitcase was temporarily placed in Xiaodong's ward. Bailey Han accompanied her downstairs to see Xiao Guai. The three children were very happy to see Bai Jinxiu. Bai Jinxiu hugged them one by one and kissed Xiao Guai's little face. She took out the gift Bailey Jing gave her from her handbag. It was a very cute Barbie doll, but Xiao Guai couldn't play with it directly. It needed to be sterilized before she could give it to her. because after the surgery, her body was very weak and her immunity was relatively poor. She had to strictly control her contact with the outside world. Xiaodong's body recovered very quickly under the careful care of Bai Jinxiu and Bailey Han. 2 days later, her wound rarely hurt and she could walk on the ground freely. Under Xiao Guai's strong request, she and Bailey Han even carried Hai to her ward. The family was finally reunited, although it was in the ward. Bailey Han deliberately took a picture of this scene with his camera as a souvenir. Many things could happen in a week. For example, Xiaodong's wound had healed and she could be discharged from the hospital. For example, Shui Rian had gained Tomac's trust and often visited the castle with Holly. They even visited Xiao Guai in the hospital several times. Every time Shui Rian entered Xiao Guai's ward, Xiaodong would follow Mika Kito's instructions and pay attention to her movements. However, she didn't find anything unusual, so she gradually let down her guard. Another example was Xiao Guai's recovery after the surgery. The doctor said that she could be discharged after 2 more months of observation and would come to the hospital regularly for checkups. When Xiaodong was discharged from the hospital, Mika Kito happened to have something to deal with and couldn't come to visit her. Bailey Han took her back to the villa. The thing she wanted to do the most was to wash herself properly. During her stay in the hospital, she was worried that her wound would get infected, so she could only wipe her body with a towel. She felt dirty all over and was extremely uncomfortable. Bai Jinxiu specially boiled a pot of ginger water, saying that it was better for pregnant women to wash their hair with it. Bailey Han washed her hair with the ginger water. His fingers skillfully rubbed her hair and even used his exclusive massage technique to massage her scalp. She was so comfortable that she almost fell asleep. When she was bathing, she wanted to do it herself, but Bailey Han insisted on helping her. He said that he was worried that her wound would be affected. When he said this, Bai Jinxiu was beside him. Xiaodong blushed and coughed uncomfortably. Bai Jinxiu acted as if she didn't hear anything. She smiled and said, "I should go to the hospital to accompany Xiao Guai. Xia, after your bath, rest for a while. Remember to drink the chicken soup I simmered in the kitchen." Xiaodong hurriedly said, "Okay, be careful on the road." Bai Jinxiu carried the food box out of the door. Inside was the chicken soup for Xiao Guai. After she walked out of the living room door, her lips curled into a smile. "Okay, honey, let's go in and take a bath." Bailey Han suddenly bent down and picked her up. She hurriedly hugged his neck. "I can walk by myself. Kigai be good. Don't move." He coaxed her as if he was coaxing a child. In the bathroom, facing his deep gaze, her cheeks flushed red. She was too embarrassed to take off her clothes in front of him. He smirked, his fingers skillfully landing on her back as he whispered, "Wifey, close your eyes." She muttered softly, "I should be the one saying that." He smiled deeply. "I'm not the one who's shy right now." "Okay." She closed her eyes, resigned to her fate. Although she couldn't see, her senses were especially sensitive. She could clearly feel his fingers gently pulling down her zipper and peeling off the long dress from her body. The bathroom was already filled with steam, so she didn't feel cold at all. However, when her skin was completely exposed, she couldn't help but shiver and instinctively covered her abdomen. "Honey, don't cover it. Let me take a look." His broad palm wrapped around her fingers. Her eyelashes fluttered and she said nervously, "No, it's too ugly." "It's not ugly. It's not ugly at all." Bailey Han squatted down in front of her and slowly moved her fingers away. A scar suddenly entered his line of sight. The scar was light pink, which was the appearance of a healing wound. He stared at the scar and felt a little jealous. Suddenly, he pressed his lips against it. Her body stiffened and she opened her eyes abruptly. "No, hubby, it's too dirty." He acted as if he didn't hear her and used the tip of his tongue to gently lick the scar. Tears welled up in her eyes and her vision blurred. She didn't know when, but he had already stood up and gently wiped away the tears at the corner of her eyes. He chuckled and said, "Silly girl, why are you crying?" Before he could finish speaking, she suddenly hooked her arms around his neck and kissed him hard on the lips. Her nimble tongue slid into his mouth and the two of them kissed tightly together. She felt something pushing against her waist. He suddenly let go of her and panted heavily. His eyes were passionate and a little scary. The dense desire almost drowned her. She reached out and wanted to hold him. "Hubby, let me help you." Her fingers had already touched the hot spot. He suddenly grabbed her wrist and said in a low and hoarse voice, "It's okay. It'll be fine after a while." He took a deep breath and tried hard to suppress the throbbing in his body. In front of her, he rinsed with cold water and adjusted the temperature of the water to the appropriate temperature. "Honey, it's done. I'll help you bathe." She shyly replied with an and sat down with her back facing him. Bailey Han's eyes had already regained their clarity. At this moment, there were no impurities in his eyes. As if he was treating a treasure, he carefully wiped and washed her body. "Come and see." Song Shu 566. Chapter 288. Late at night, in the study of the Dark Night Castle. Tomac swirled the red wine in his hand and glanced at Mika Kito sitting opposite him. "Shen, have you thought about the matter I mentioned to you last time?" Mika Kito looked calm. "What do you mean, father?" Tomac put the wine glass on the table. "The inheritance of the Dark Knight family." Mika Kito looked serious. "Father, I can't do that. But Holly has changed a lot in the past 2 years. He has matured a lot and can take charge of things independently. You should hand over the Dark Knight family to him." Tomac said slowly. 2 years ago, I did say that if Holly could change, I would consider handing over the family to him. But I'm not satisfied with what he has done in the past 2 years. Mika Kito pursed her lips. "I don't understand. I thought he had done a good job." Tomac shook his head and stood up. He walked to the desk and took out a book with a black cover from the drawer. He handed the book to Mika Kito and looked angry. "Look at this book." Beitangshan took the book and opened it to the first page. On the first page, there were 2 big words written in Italian, "Account Book." As he flipped to the back, he saw that every line was transaction information. The things recorded in the account book shocked him. He flipped through the account book without changing his expression and slowly raised his head. "You suspect Holly of corruption?" Tomac sneered. "It's not a suspicion. This is the evidence of Holly's corruption. He pocketed a total of 12 billion yuan after taking charge of those companies." Beitangshan said in a deep voice, "Foster father, could there be some misunderstanding?" Tomac raised his palm, his expression solemn and resolute. "There can't be a misunderstanding. I spent a lot of effort to get this account book. Shen, do you know where he spent the money? Gambling, horse racing, playing with women. If he were not my nephew, I would have punished him. In short, the Dark Knight family can't be handed over to him. He will ruin the family sooner or later." Mika Kito frowned and pondered for a moment. "Father, I still can't agree to your request. After all, I'm an outsider. If I inherit the family, I can't convince the public and there will be misunderstandings between Holly and me. You're still healthy. Why don't you give Holly 2 years to change his bad habits?" Tomac shook his head. "Shun, there's an old saying in China. It's easy to change mountains and rivers, but it's hard to change one's nature. It's very difficult for Holly to change his bad habits. When I was still alive, he was already so brazenly greedy. After I die, who knows what he'll do? I'm still worried about handing the family over to him." Mika Kito frowned and pondered for a long time. "Father, do you think it's feasible? Holly will inherit the family and I'll help him for 3 years. After 3 years, if he doesn't change his bad habits, I'll inherit the family. If he's willing to turn over a new leaf, he'll continue to inherit the family." Tomac patted his shoulder heavily. "Shen, the family and Holly will be handed over to you." Mika Kito looked serious. "Father, don't worry. As long as I, Mika Kito, am alive, I won't let the family be ruined by Holly." "Good, good." Tomac was very pleased. "I plan to announce this on the day of Hai's 1-month-old celebration. Father, aren't you being too hasty? Holly doesn't know about this yet, right?" Tomac smiled. "I'm old. I've long wanted to pass this responsibility to you youngsters. Shen, don't worry. I'll talk to Holly." Mika Kido came out of the castle and drove back to the city. Suzaka drove while he sat in the back with a serious expression. He knew Holly well. Although he appeared to be easy to get along with, he was actually a ruthless person who was full of ambition for the family business. Would Holly bear a grudge against him because of Tomac's decision? He rubbed his eyebrows with a headache. He suddenly felt that it was a wrong decision to ask for Holly's assistance. He didn't know how many conflicts there would be in the future. The next day, Tomac called Holly to the castle. The uncle and nephew talked in the study for more than 2 hours. When Holly came out of the study, his face was very ugly. He rushed out of the castle and got into the car. He sped all the way. His hands were tightly holding the steering wheel. The veins on the back of his hands were throbbing. His eyes were red with anger and murderous intent. He stepped on the gas pedal, and the car was like an arrow leaving the bow, carrying his vigorous anger as it sped away. In the chief appraiser's office of QXL, the largest auction company in Rome, Shui Ruyan stood in front of a landscape painting with her arms around her shoulders. Her watery eyes were fixed on the painting. Suddenly, the door opened. A tall figure strode in and pulled her into his arms. His thin lips kissed her fiercely. She widened her eyes in shock. What she saw was Holly's cold eyes. She pushed him hard and made muffled sounds. He lifted his arm and threw her on the spacious sofa. Her heart was beating violently. From his dangerous eyes, she knew very well what was going to happen next. If she rejected him at this time, she would only be hurt. This thought only flashed in her mind. Her body had already made a decision. She lay under him obediently and let him tear her skirt apart. She stuck out the tip of her tongue and gently licked his lips. Her hands stroked his chest, trying to make him relax. His eyes were cold and without a trace of warmth. He threw the torn skirt on the carpet and unbuttoned her underwear with one hand. His teeth bit her breast hard. She groaned in pain and said softly, "Darling, be gentle." He didn't loosen his grip, but his stiff muscles relaxed a lot under her hands. Her soft hands landed on his belt and took off his pants for him. At the same time, he also took off her lace underwear, which was the only thing covering her body. He parted her legs and penetrated her fiercely. She bit his shoulder in pain. He sprinted with all his might, but she didn't feel any pleasure at all. It was so painful that she felt like her body was about to be torn apart. She groaned, her beautiful eyes misting over as she looked at him weakly and pitifully. "Darling, be gentler." Under her gentle call, he gradually came back to his senses. He kissed her red and swollen lips and gradually slowed down. Gradually, a numb feeling rose from his abdomen. She wrapped her hands around his neck and pulled his head down. She kissed his earlobe and said in a soft and seductive voice, "Darling, I love you." These 3 words were like magic. He hugged her even tighter. After she got used to him, he became fierce again. He bit her earlobe and whispered in a hoarse voice, "Baby, I'm sorry." She stroked his handsome face with her fingers and smiled gently. "It's okay. Who asked me to love you?" His emotions were surging. He kissed her lips deeply and she responded passionately. The 2 of them were deeply entangled. After the 2 of them reached the peak together, he hugged her and lay on the sofa. She leaned her head against his chest and drew circles on his firm chest with her slender fingers. Her voice was languid and a little aggrieved. "You ruined my dress." Holly pinched her chest mischievously and said with a naughty smile, "It's okay if the dress is ruined. It's good that you didn't ruin it." Shui Rian blushed and punched his chest. She pouted and said, "You're so naughty." He smiled devilishly and kissed her lips. "I'm so naughty. Do you like it?" She turned her head away on purpose and didn't answer him. He turned her head and looked at her with a burning gaze. "Answer me. Do you like it?" She bit her lip and still didn't answer. He smiled mischievously. "If you don't answer, we'll do it again until you answer." Her big eyes were watery and as transparent as crystals. She pouted and said coquettishly, "You're bullying me." His slender fingers slid down her inner thigh and he chuckled. "I like to bully you. Hurry up and answer me. Otherwise I like it." She suddenly clamped her legs together. Her cheeks were red and her eyelashes were fluttering like butterflies. That's a good girl. He kissed her lips and sat up with her in his arms. Shui Rian looked at the rag in distress. The dress is ruined. What should I do? Holly shrugged nonchalantly. Rest in the lounge. I'll get your assistant to buy it and send it over. He draped his suit jacket over her shoulders and stood up to tidy up his clothes. She suddenly grabbed his wrist. Are you leaving? He turned his head and smiled. But you can't bear to part with me? She nodded. He ruffled her hair. I'm just going to my desk to make a call. She said, Oh. He smiled brightly and she couldn't help but smile too. He returned after making a call and stared at her. Can you still walk? Before. To the lounge, of course. Don't tell me you want to wait for your assistant like this. He didn't wait for her to answer and suddenly bent down to carry her. She hugged his waist and leaned her head on his chest. She said softly, Darling, you seemed unhappy just now. Tell me and let me share your burden, okay? Holly suddenly stopped in his tracks and his body tensed up. Shui Rian hugged his waist tightly and said gently, If you don't want to say it, then forget it. As long as you remember that no matter what happens, I'll stand by your side. He suddenly lowered his head. His eyes were dark and there were many things that she couldn't understand. He said softly, You've changed. In the past, you only cared about benefits. She was stunned. Holly smiled bitterly. If I still don't change after experiencing so many things, I'd be a fool. Holly, during my most difficult time, you were the one who gave me a second chance. I'm very grateful to you. The two of us are actually very similar. In order to get what we want, we'll do whatever it takes and even betray our friends and family. Sometimes I feel very lonely. She looked into his eyes seriously and said slowly, Do you ever feel lonely? If so, let me accompany you. Come and see. Song Shu 566. Chapter 289. Holly stared at Shui Rian in silence. She lowered her eyes and smiled sadly. You're still unwilling to believe me. He suddenly lowered his head and kissed her lips forcefully. Their lips and tongues intertwined. He kissed her as he carried her to the lounge. He kicked the door shut with his right foot. In the resting room, there was a very comfortable bed. He placed her on it and leaned his body on top of her. Unlike the rough and violent kiss just now, this time, he kissed her very gently. His hands teased her sensitive areas. She gasped for breath and gradually softened in his arms. Both of them were sweating profusely when they heard the assistant knocking on the door. Miss Shui, I've bought the clothes. Should I send them in now? Shui Rian was nervous and instinctively clamped her legs together. This action made Holly so comfortable that he almost ejaculated. Sweat flowed down from his hair and fell on her pink breasts. He looked extremely lewd. She grabbed his arm nervously. Darling, what should we do? Idiot. She doesn't dare to come in. She'll leave if she doesn't hear a response. He didn't stop and continued to attack her. He even hit a certain part of her body. She almost screamed out loud and quickly bit her lips. The assistant knocked on the door again. Miss Shui? Shui Rian's eyes were watery and charming. She was panting and hesitating if she should make a sound. After that, she didn't hear the assistant knocking on the door. He probably really left. She heaved a sigh of relief. Her expression pleased him. He smiled wickedly and moved faster. In the end, he hugged her tightly. A warm current poured into her body and she came out with him. He hugged her and said in a sexy and husky voice, Uncle called me to the castle today. She looked up at him and didn't say anything. She just listened quietly. He continued. He said that I still have many shortcomings and can't inherit the family. He gave me 3 years to turn over a new leaf with Mika Kito's help. He also said that if I don't have the ability to inherit the family after 3 years, he will strip me of my inheritance and hand over the family to Mika Kito. She hugged him tightly, silently comforting him. Hatred flashed in his eyes. Mika Kito. Ever since the old man took him in as his adopted son, I have become useless in his eyes. No matter what I do, he is not satisfied. He will always compare me to Mika Kito. 2 years ago, he wanted to pass the family business to Mika Kito, But Mika Keto pretended to reject him. I think he is looking for an excuse to strip me of my right to inherit the family business. This time he finally did it. Shui Ruyan stroked his back and said softly, "Darling, even if the old man has made his decision, you haven't lost. Haven't you always wanted to get rid of Mika Keto? As long as you get rid of him, he will no longer pose a threat to you." Holly pursed his lips and said coldly, "I have to admit that Mika Keto is a strong opponent. In the past 2 years, I have sent many assassins and even instigated the Sumiyoshi-kai and Inagawa-kai to fight for Yamaguchi-gumi's territory. However, he still managed to escape." Shui Ruyan's lips curved into a strange smile. "This time, he won't be able to escape. Aren't you already prepared to take action? Why don't you do it before little Hai-Hai's 1-month-old celebration?" Holly frowned and looked down at her. "Bailey Han might be implicated. Don't you feel bad?" She chuckled. "I have said that I have already given up on him. But you, Xia Dong and Hai-Hai, are you willing to sacrifice them?" Holly's light blue eyes were filled with complicated emotions. His thin lips were pursed and he tightened his grip on her shoulders. She smiled faintly. "If you can't bear to, then forget it. We will think of other ways." He slowly closed his eyes and was silent for a long time. When he opened them again, his eyes were filled with coldness. "As long as I can defeat Mika Keto, I will do anything." She lay on his chest and was silent for a moment. Then she said lazily, "I need to work." He raised his eyebrows and looked at her. "So?" She pinched his handsome face. "So, you should leave now." He grabbed her hand. "I am the boss. I will give you a day off." She smiled. "Thank you very much, boss. But you have to let me put on my clothes." They had been fooling around for a long time and he did not want to continue. He got out of bed and went to the bathroom to tidy himself up. He walked to her side and kissed her forehead. "I will ask my assistant to send your clothes in. You can rest for a while and then I will ask the driver to send you back to the villa. I will go out to settle some matters." She smiled obediently. "Be careful on the way back." He nodded and walked to the door. Suddenly, he turned around and frowned slightly. "Can you move? Do you need me to wash it for you?" She quickly shook her head. "It's okay. Go ahead. I will come back early tonight." He smiled and closed the door of the lounge. Shui Ruyan lay on the bed and stared blankly at the ceiling. Bailey Han's handsome face appeared in her mind. Then, it turned into Holly's face. She sighed and turned to lie on her side, curling herself up. Knock knock. Her assistant's sweet voice rang out. "Miss Shui, I have placed the dress in the office. Is there anything else you need?" Shui Ruyan said indifferently, "There is nothing else. You can go out first." After her assistant left, she slowly got up and went to the office to retrieve the dress. Then, she took a quick shower and changed into the new dress. It was a very fitting dress. The corners of her lips slowly curled up. When she heard Holly's voice on the phone, he told his assistant her measurements. After Shui Ruyan finished tidying up, she took her handbag and walked out leisurely. Her assistant stood up. "Miss Shui, you are going out?" "I'm not feeling well. I will go back first. If there is anything, call me." After she instructed her assistant, she left without looking back. She did not return to Holly's villa. Instead, she drove to the hospital. Shui Ruyan stood outside the nursery and looked inside through the glass. She could see a lot of Xiaobao babies lying on the small beds. Xia Dong's baby was in the innermost position. She looked for a while but could not find it. Lying on the crib facing the glass was a foreign baby. The baby's eyes were very big and bright. He stared at her without blinking. His little mouth moved slightly as if he was very curious. Shui Ruyan smiled and waved at the baby. The little guy's eyes opened wider. His little mouth opened slightly and his hands danced as if he was responding to her. The smile on her lips became even more brilliant. The little guy danced for a while and suddenly grinned. The angel-like pure smile made Shui Ruyan suddenly shocked. An idea suddenly popped up in her mind. Perhaps having a child was not bad. But in the next second, the smile on her face froze. She slowly withdrew her hand, turned around and walked forward indifferently. If it were not for that woman, she would have already had her own baby. She would have even become the mistress of the family. She would not be like now, clinging to a man to live. Every time she got closer to her, Shui Ruyan's hatred deepened, and she hated herself even more. Tomac discussed with Xia Dong and her husband to hold a grand full moon party for Hai Hai. Bailey Han did not want to bother him, but Tomac said that he still had an important matter to announce. Bailey Han also agreed. Because Hai Hai was born prematurely, her body was thin and weak. So, she stayed in the hospital for more than 20 days in an incubator. It was not until a few days before the full moon party that her physical condition improved and met the standards to be discharged. There were many luxury cars parked in the hospital's underground parking lot. The most eye-catching ones were a red Ferrari and a black Rolls-Royce. They belonged to Mika Kito and Bailey Han respectively. Today was the day that Xia Dong and the others picked up Hai Hai from the hospital. Mika Kito happened to be free, so she came with them. A black Audi slowly drove into the blind spot of the surveillance camera. After making sure that there was no one around, a pistol suddenly popped out of the window and smashed the surveillance camera. The door opened and a man in black clothes and a black mask came out. He was carrying a black bag in his hand and strode toward the Ferrari. He lowered his body and suddenly got under the Ferrari. He took out some tools from the bag and fiddled with the car. A few minutes later, he got up from the bottom of the car and walked toward the Rolls-Royce 10 meters away. He did the same thing for a while. Before the hospital's security arrived, the man in the mask had jumped into the Audi and quickly fled. Mika Kito and Xia Dong went downstairs together with Suzuka behind them. After saying goodbye, Mika Kito and Suzuka went to the Ferrari. Bailey Han opened the car door with Hai Hai in his arms. Xia Dong sat in the front passenger seat and took the child. Bailey Han got into the driver's seat. After starting the car, he heard a strange sound coming from the car. He stepped on the accelerator, but the car did not move. Xia Dong turned around and asked, "What's wrong?" "It's broken down. Let's get out of the car first and find a tow truck to send it to the 4S store. We'll take a taxi back." Mika Kito sat in the back seat with her eyes closed. Suzuka saw Bailey Han and Xia Dong get out of the car through the rearview mirror. She said calmly, "Their car seems to have broken down." Mika Kito suddenly opened her eyes, got out of the car, and walked towards them. "What's wrong?" Bailey Han was calling for a tow truck when Xia Dong replied, "The car broke down." "Take my car." Hence, Xia Dong and Bailey Han got into the Ferrari with the child in their arms. The Ferrari slowly drove out of the garage. After driving for 2 streets, they saw Xia Dong's villa. Suzuka stepped on the brakes and suddenly realized that the brakes had broken down. The villa was right in front of them, but Suzuka had no intention of stopping the car. Xia Dong looked at Suzuka in the rearview mirror in surprise and reminded her, "Suzuka, we're here." Suzuka said calmly, "The brakes have broken down. Attention, Song Shu 566. Chapter 290. What? How did this happen? Xia Dong was shocked. Bailey Han hugged Hai Hai tightly with one hand and held her hand with the other. "Don't be afraid." Mika Kito glanced at Xia Dong with a serious expression. "Suzuka, slow down." Suzuka stared ahead. "It's no use. I can't control the speed." Bailey Han said, "Let's leave this block first. Take the West 3rd Ring Road and get out of the city." This road was the main road with a lot of traffic and people. They couldn't control the speed of the car now. If they encountered a traffic light, the consequences would be unimaginable. Vermilion Bird tightly gripped the steering wheel. Her palms were already sweating. She quickly glanced at the navigation system, and in her heart, she already had a general understanding of the traffic lights in the entire block. There was a traffic light about 100 meters ahead. She looked up and saw that it was a green light. There were only a few seconds left before the light turned red, and she had to rush over before the light turned red. She gritted her teeth and overtook the car next to her. The moment the green light turned red, she quickly drove over the zebra crossing. Bailey Han hugged Hai Hai tightly and protected her. Xia Dong clutched the seatbelt tightly. Her heart was beating violently. Mika Kito's face was very ugly. I suspect that it's man-made. Bailey Han didn't look too good either. The culprit must have predicted that after our car broke down, he would get in your car and then catch us all. That's right. Mika Kito's eyes were cold. No matter who that person is, I won't let him off once I find out who he is. Bailey Han pursed his lips. Now, let's find a way to stop the car first. Suzaku's eyes were calm. She focused all her attention on the road ahead. She had to race against time and successfully cross one traffic light after another. Then, she had to drive the car to the remote suburbs and find a way to stop the car. 3 more seconds, another traffic light was approaching. Vermilion Bird's muscles were stretched taut. She fiercely stepped on the accelerator, and with a schwa sound, she dashed forward. The situation was getting worse, and there was no way to slow down. Seeing a long line of cars waiting for the green light, Suzaku quickly turned the steering wheel to the right and drove the car into another road. Because of the sudden turn, Xia Dong's body tilted and she fell toward Bailey Han. Bailey Han subconsciously reached out one hand to support Xia Dong and the other hand hugged Hai Hai. Hai Hai was held by his arm. The cries were so loud that Vermilion Bird's forehead broke out in cold sweat. Mika Kito pursed her lips and said in a low voice, "Suzav, be careful." "It's okay. We were too careless." Xia Dong quickly stroked Hai Hai's little face and comforted her in a low voice. Bailey Han loosened his arm and shook it gently. "Hai Hai, be good. Don't cry." Mika Kito frowned and pondered for a moment. Then she took out her cell phone and called the Dark Knight Castle. "Godfather, it's me, Shin. Our car's brakes failed. We're trapped in the car now. Xia and the children are also in the car. I want you to send a helicopter to pick up the children first." If the brakes failed, there was another way. That was to use the bumper, carriage, and other rigid parts of the car to collide with obstacles, such as trees, stones, walls, etc., to create friction and force the car to stop and get out of danger. However, Hai Hai and Xia Dong were still in the car. There was no way to do that. Hai Hai was less than a month old. How could such a young child withstand the impact? Xia Dong had just undergone surgery and was recovering. She could not bear the impact either. Therefore, the first thing to do was to find a way to get Xia and Hai Hai out of the car. After receiving the call, Tomac immediately ordered someone to arrange a helicopter and prepare some first aid medicine on the plane. This time, Suzaku specifically chose the small road. Although it was narrow, there were relatively few cars and no traffic lights. However, she had to be very alert to the passers-by. After more than half an hour of trepidation, the car finally sped onto the suburban road. In front of them, there was a team of traffic police carrying out their duties. They set up roadblocks to remind the cars to slow down, and from afar, they waved to Vermilion Bird to slow down. "Hey, the car in front, slow down." A traffic police officer shouted with a megaphone. However, the Ferrari did not slow down and sped over like an arrow. Seeing the car getting closer and closer, the traffic police officer was so shocked that he broke out in a cold sweat. He quickly dodged to the side. The Ferrari roared and a cloud of dust drifted with the wind. "Quick, catch up with the car in front." The captain saw that the situation was not good and immediately jumped into the police car. The police car quickly caught up. The captain picked up the megaphone and shouted, "The car in front, pull over quickly." The Ferrari did not slow down and sped on the open road. A traffic police officer sensed that something was wrong and said, "Captain, could it be that the car's brakes have failed?" The captain thought for a moment and continued to shout with the megaphone, "The car in front, listen up. If you can't slow down because the brakes have failed, please call me. My number is..." Soon, the captain's phone rang and he quickly picked it up. "Hello, I'm a passenger in the Ferrari. Our car's brakes failed. There's a baby and a patient who just had surgery in the car. Please inform the relevant departments to remove all the roadblocks on this road. It's best to let other cars divert to ensure that the Ferrari is unimpeded." The captain was stunned. "How should I address you?" "Mika Kito, my name. Please give the order immediately." Mika Kito's voice became stern. "Okay, I got it. I'll inform the station immediately." After the captain ended the call, he immediately reported what had happened to his superior. Then he made emergency arrangements to remove all the roadblocks on this road and set up roadblocks at the exit and entrance of the road. He also informed everyone to change lanes. The Ferrari drove further and further away on the outskirts of the city. A helicopter suddenly flew in their direction and roared in midair. Andrew, who had once protected Xia Dong, was sitting in the pilot's seat. He was fully armed and wore an avionics headset. He contacted Mika Kito through the microphone. "Young Master Shin, this is Andrew. Please drive the car to a spacious area. I'll drop down a rope ladder to bring Miss and Miss Hi up." Bailey Han suddenly felt a little lucky that they were in Mika Kito's Ferrari. This car was a convertible. After opening the roof, it would be easier for the people in the car to climb up the rope ladder. Bailey Han asked, "Do you have a rope?" Suzaku said, "Yes, it's in the glove compartment next to the passenger seat." Mika Kito, who was sitting in the passenger seat, opened the glove compartment. Sure enough, she found a ball of rope inside. It was about the thickness of a grain of rice and was very strong. This was the rope that Suzaku used to jump on roofs and walls. At the end of the rope, there was a claw-like iron hook that could grab anything to fix the rope. Mika Kito handed the rope to Bailey Han. Bailey Han tied Hi tightly to Xia Dong's chest and said, "Honey, take Hi and leave first later. Don't be afraid. We'll help you down there." Xia Dong looked down at Hi, who was sleeping soundly on her chest. She gritted her teeth and nodded firmly. "Okay, I can do it." For her daughter, she had to do it. She grabbed Bailey Han's hand nervously. "Honey, you have to be careful too." Bailey Han smiled reassuringly. "We will." Suzaku suddenly said, "There's a pair of gloves and a pair of goggles in the glove compartment. Miss Xia, please put them on. They can protect your hands and eyes." The gloves were very thin. After putting them on, there was no obstruction at all. At the same time, they could protect Xia Dong's hands very well. According to Suzaku, the gloves were made of python skin. The roof of the convertible slowly opened. Bailey Han unfastened his seatbelt and helped Xia Dong stand steadily. Because the car was moving too fast and the strong wind was blowing, Xia Dong did not feel much with the goggles on, but Bailey Han could barely open his eyes. He could only stand with his back facing the direction of the wind. Andrew looked for an opportunity to get closer to the Ferrari, but this section of the road was a mountain road and kept turning. After driving through an empty section of the road, before they could connect, there was another turn. Xia Dong and Bailey Han had no way to grab the rope ladder. "Andrew, what should we do? There's no way we can get close to the car." Ahu, who was sitting in the co-pilot seat, was sweating profusely. Andrew gritted his teeth, his eyes shining with determination. "Don't worry. Pay attention to the ground and be ready to connect at any time. There's a bridge 10 kilometers ahead. Under the bridge is a river. If the car tries to crash at the bridge, it might crash into the river. Just in case, ask for speedboat support. Ahu, contact the castle immediately." "Understood." Ahu picked up the communicator and contacted the castle. On the ground, Suzuki had also noticed the bridge and river marked on the GPS. She calculated in her mind. If they could crash at the bridge before they crossed it, even if the car could not stop, they still had a way out, and that was to jump into the river. The three of them were very skilled and knew how to swim. If there was someone to help them under the bridge, they would definitely be able to survive. However, the premise was that Xia Dong and the child had to be sent out first. Suzaku briefly mentioned her idea. Mika Kito and Bailey Han did not have any objections. Xia Dong nervously grabbed Bailey Han's hand. "Hubby, brother Shin, nothing must happen to you." Bailey Han held her shoulders tightly and said in a deep voice, "Don't worry, we will be fine. Honey, after you grab the rope ladder, you must be careful." Beitang Shin smiled and said, Xia, I'm glad that I taught you self-defense 4 years ago. With your skills, I'm sure you'll be able to hold on to the rope ladder. Believe in yourself and believe in us. We still have to hold a 1-month-old celebration for Cece." Suzaku's gaze was still fixed in front, but the corners of her lips curled up. Miss Xia, there's something I've been hiding from you. When you were kidnapped and sold to the small mountain village, it was me and White Tiger who did it. I've always wanted to apologize to you. Miss Xia, I'm sorry. She gazed at Xia Dong through the rearview mirror. Her usually cold eyes were filled with apology. Attention, Song Shu 566. Chapter 291. Xia Dong smiled slowly. I know. I've known for a long time. Suzaku looked surprised. Since you knew that I was the one who kidnapped you, why didn't you refuse when I was ordered to protect you? Weren't you worried that I would hurt you again? Xia Dong's smile became even brighter. I believe in Brother Shin. Since Brother Shin asked you to protect me, he must think that you are trustworthy. Suzaku, I've never hated you. The vermilion bird was taken aback. Her eyes were filled with complex emotions. Xia Dong smiled and turned around. She waited with Bailey Han for the rope ladder to get closer to the Ferrari. Even if there was only a very, very small chance, she couldn't give up. Mika Kito's phone suddenly rang. It was the captain of the police car behind them. He sounded very anxious. Mr. Beitang, the bridge 9 kilometers ahead is under construction. Cars can't pass through. You have to stop the car before you reach the bridge. Mika Kito pursed her lips and said in a low voice, Officer, please contact the traffic police for backup. Okay, no problem. Mika Kito hung up the phone and said in a low voice, the bridge in front is not open to traffic. We have to stop the car before we cross the bridge. They were getting closer to the bridge, but the helicopter couldn't get close to the Ferrari. Everyone's hearts were in their mouths. Mika Kito clenched her fists tightly. Bailey Han stared at the helicopter hovering in the air with a gloomy expression. His right hand, which was resting on Xia Dong's waist, was already sweating. The bridge had already appeared in front of everyone. It had been broken into 2 sections, and there were still workers working on the bridge. They finally understood why cars couldn't pass through the bridge. Especially when looking down from the plane, the thrill of the broken bridge and the depth of the river made Ah-Hu so nervous that he broke out in a cold sweat. Oh no, we're almost at the bridge. We must hurry. Andrew gritted his teeth. He grabbed the control lever with both hands and slowly pushed it down. Suddenly, the helicopter swooped down. The rope ladder swept towards the Ferrari due to gravity. Quick, the rope ladder is coming. As they got closer and closer, Bailey Han ignored the speeding car and suddenly jumped up and grabbed the rope ladder. Quick, honey, I got it. Xia Dong's heart raced. With Bailey Han's help, she grabbed onto the rope ladder with one hand. Bailey Han let go of the rope ladder and hugged Xia Dong's legs with both hands. He used all his strength to lift her up. Honey, harder. Mika Kito leaned over from the front passenger seat to help Bailey Han support Xia Dong. Xia Dong used all her strength to climb up the ladder. She kicked her legs hard and tried to prop herself up. The 2 people standing in the car pushed her legs hard at the same time. Slowly, she was finally pulled out of the car by the helicopter. Honey, hold on tight. Bailey Han watched as her body swayed with the rope ladder. His heart was about to stop. Xia Dong gripped the rope ladder tightly with both hands. The wind blew past her ears and messed up her long hair. Her long dress fluttered in the wind. She gritted her teeth and looked down at the ground. Bailey Han and Mika Kito stood in the back seat of the car and stared at her. They were too far away and she couldn't see their expressions. However, she knew that they were worried about her, just as she was worried about them. Young madam, hang on. I'll pull you up right away. Ah-Hu's voice came from above. Xia Dong's body was hanging in midair. Her arms were bearing all the weight of her body. At first, she could still bear it, but gradually, her arms became sore and numb. It felt as if they were about to break. The rope ladder was slowly retracted towards the helicopter. She gritted her teeth and held on. On the ground, Suzaku was ready to crash. There's still 500 meters left. If the car doesn't stop at the bridge, we'll jump into the river. At this moment, they didn't know that someone was monitoring everything in real time through a listening device. In the villa, Holly sat on the sofa with his hands on his knees. His face was cold and his eyes were deep and sinister. He stared at the listening device on the marble table. The conversation inside the device could be heard in the empty room. Shui Rian walked in from outside. She was wearing sexy spaghetti strap pajamas. She crossed her arms and sat lazily on the armrest of the sofa. She said calmly, "You didn't press the remote control because you wanted to let Xia Dong and her daughter go, right? It's not too late to press it now." He didn't look at her. He took out a remote control the size of an MP3 player from his pocket and pressed the red button on it. Shui Ruyan shrugged. "You heard it too. They're ready to crash. They might be able to escape." Holly sneered. "The car will explode in 30 seconds. They won't be able to escape." Under the Ferrari, the time bomb had been activated. It made a very soft beeping sound. The roar of the car covered the sound of the time bomb timer. No one realized that death was very close to them. The car was getting closer to the bridge. It was about 200 meters away. The timer under the car showed that there were only 20 seconds left. Suzuki aimed at the bridge and stepped on the accelerator. The car rushed towards the bridge. Just as they were about to reach the stone tablet at the bridge, her heart skipped a beat. She felt that something bad was about to happen. She suddenly shouted, "Whether the car stops after the crash or not, we'll jump into the river." If the car hit the bridge, she and Mika Kito would be the first to bear the brunt of the impact. They would be in the most danger. If they jumped into the river the moment the car hit the bridge, their chances of survival would be higher. This thought flashed through the minds of the three of them. 10 seconds, 8 seconds, 5 seconds, the car hit the bridge. Jump. Suzuka suddenly unbuckled her seatbelt and jumped into the river. At the same time, Mika Kito and Bailey Han jumped out without hesitation. The moment the three figures jumped out of the car, there was a loud boom as the Ferrari exploded. Flames shot out in all directions, and a strong airflow pressed down on the three of them, pushing them far away. The speed of their fall also increased. Plop, plop. The three of them fell into the river one after another. At this moment, Xia Dong was still hanging in midair. However, she was very close to the cabin door. She saw the car explode and the scene of the three of them jumping into the river. Tears gushed out of her eyes. She grabbed the rope ladder tightly and screamed, "Hubby! Brother Shin!" Ahu was so anxious that he was sweating profusely. "Young madam, don't be agitated. The rescue team is on the way. Please come up first." When Xia Dong heard Ahu's voice, her panicked heart calmed down a little. She stared at the river. Sure enough, there was a speedboat speeding toward the place where the three of them fell. Behind the speedboat was a speedboat marked police. The water traffic police had also arrived. "Quick, over here. You guys, go over there." The Castle of the Night and the water traffic police jumped into the river at the same time to search for Bailey Han and the other two. I see them. They're over there." Someone pointed in a direction and shouted. A head popped out of the water and slowly swam toward the speedboat. The second one, the third one, they're all out. They're all alive. That's great. Harry, drive the speedboat closer. The rescue team cheered excitedly. The two pilots steered the speedboat closer to Bailey Han and the other two. A few rescue team members had already rushed over. They formed teams of two and carried the three of them toward the speedboat. "Brady, hurry up and pull young Master Shin up." Two rescue team members lifted Mika Kito's body. Soon, Bailey Han and Suzuki were also rescued. The people in the helicopter also heaved a sigh of relief. Ahu stood at the cabin door and shouted, "Young madam, young master and the others have been rescued. Give me your hand. I'll pull you up." Xia Dong's anxious heart finally settled back into her chest. She looked up and saw Ahu's familiar face. He reached out a hand and gazed at her. Just one more step, and she and Hai would have been safe. However, her hands had been holding on for so long that they were numb. She tried to free one hand to grab Ahu's hand, but she couldn't do it. She was worried that if she freed one hand, her other hand wouldn't be able to hold on before she could grab Ahu. "No, Ahu, I can't hold on any longer." Xia Dong felt her body getting heavier and heavier. It felt like there was a 1,000-kilogram rock under her feet. Her abdomen also hurt a little. She guessed that she had pulled on her wound. "Young madam, don't worry. Move back a little. Be careful not to hurt Hai. I'll raise the ladder a little more." Xia Dong looked down at Hai Hai. She was so small. She was like a soft little ball of meat lying on her chest. She couldn't let Hai Hai get hurt. With this belief in her heart, a sudden burst of energy erupted from her body. She gritted her teeth and leaned back. When Ahu pulled the ladder up, she suddenly freed her right hand and grabbed the handle of the cabin door. Hurry! Ahu hurriedly grabbed her arm and pulled her body, which was hanging outside. Xia Dong slumped in her seat. Her entire body was drenched in sweat, and her wet skirt stuck to her body. She looked up at Andrew, who was sitting in the front row, and asked while panting, "Andrew, how are Ahan and Brother Shin? Are they hurt?" Andrew connected to the Dark Knight family's speedboat and asked about their situation. Then he said, "Miss, the three of them are slightly injured. They're very conscious now. Young master, please don't worry." Xia Dong was relieved. Fortunately, the river was deep and the three of them were skilled. They entered the water in the correct position, so their injuries were relatively light. Ahu handed her a jacket. "Young madam, please put this jacket on first." "Thank you." Xia Dong's arms were sore. The simple act of taking the jacket was difficult. With trembling fingers, she untied Hai Hai from her chest and put on the jacket. Hai Hai's sleep was disturbed. Her tightly shut eyes moved and her little hands clenched. It seemed like she was about to wake up. Xia Dong shook her arms gently and hummed softly. She leaned into her arms again and slowly fell asleep. Attention, Shinwoo 799. Chapter 292. Bailey Han and the other two leaned against the side of the speedboat. Bailey Han's arms and legs were slightly scratched, Mika Kito's ears were ringing, and her arms were also slightly scratched. Suzaku's back was injured by the airflow during the explosion, and a palm-sized burn was inflicted. Fortunately, it wasn't serious. The accompanying doctors on the speedboat had already given them emergency treatment. The speedboat sailed on the river, getting further and further away from the bridge. The Ferrari was still burning at the bridgehead, and police cars had already arrived to put out the fire. Bailey Han stared coldly at the burnt car and said in a deep voice, "There was a bomb installed on the car." Mika Kito glanced at Suzuki. "If Suzuki hadn't suggested to jump into the water, we would have been killed by the explosion." Suzaku said indifferently, "I'm curious why the bomb only exploded when it hit the bridgehead." Bailey Han frowned and said in a deep voice, "There are two possibilities. One is the activation method of the bomb. If the bomb is controlled by sound, it will only explode when the decibel reaches a certain level. The vibration caused by the collision caused the sound to reach a critical point, so the bomb exploded. The other possibility is that it was a time bomb. The other possibility is that the other party had already set the time, and the bomb would naturally explode when the time was up. It has been 1.5 hours since we left the garage. If we had escaped the car before the explosion, wouldn't the other party's scheme have failed? I feel that we have overlooked something." Mika Kito frowned. Bailey Han's eyes were cold and murderous. "No matter what, I will find the mastermind behind this and make him pay the price." Mika Kito remained silent, but the murderous intent in her eyes was no less than Bailey Han's. On the other side, after Holly heard Vermilion Bird shout, "Jump," he only heard a huge explosion sound, and after that, there was no other sound. He didn't know whether Beitang Shen and the other two were dead or not. His face was cold and he was a little irritable. Shui Ruyan pursed her lips. "Darling, don't worry. There will be news soon." The helicopter landed on the private helipad of the castle. Tomac, who had rushed over after hearing the news, was waiting in front of the helicopter. Ahu carried Hai Hai and walked down first. Xia Dong slowly walked down the helicopter with Andrew's help. Xia, are you okay?" Tomac asked with concern. Xia Dong approached him and joked, "Godfather, I'm fine. It's just that my arms are so sore that I don't even have the strength to carry Hai Hai." "It's good that you're fine. You little girl, you scared this old man to death." Tomac was all smiles as he took Hai Hai from Ahu's arms. "It's okay if you can't carry Hai Hai. You still have me, your god-grandfather." Hai Hai had woken up at some point. She stared curiously at the old man with a white beard in front of her with her big, beautiful eyes. Her little mouth moved a little, and she looked extremely adorable. Tomac laughed heartily and caressed her pink little face. Hi baby, do you want to say hello to Grandpa? His smile infected Hi. She opened her little mouth and revealed a beautiful smile. Tomac was so excited that his beard twitched. Look, Hi is smiling at me. Aya, this little girl is so lovable. In less than an hour, Bailey Han and the other two were also sent back to the castle. They had already changed their clothes on the speedboat, and their injuries had also been treated, so they didn't look disheveled. Instead, they looked as dignified and calm as usual. In the study, Bailey Han and Mika Kito said in unison, Godfather. Tomac looked serious. You've worked hard. What do you think about what happened today? Mika Kito said, the other party not only damaged the brakes, but also installed a bomb in the car. He wanted to kill us. I suspect that it was done by other families, but I don't have any evidence. Bailey Han said, I've already sent people to the underground parking lot of the hospital to look for clues. In addition, the fragments of the bomb have been collected. Maybe we can find some clues. Tomac's eyes darkened. He tapped his fingers on the armrest of the chair and said in a deep voice, Ever since I took over Barit's forces, there are still some dissidents who have been secretly operating. Ashin, send someone to investigate their movements. Mika Kito responded. Something suddenly flashed through his mind, but when he thought about it carefully, he couldn't grasp it. Coming out of the study, he had been silent the whole time. Walking side by side with Bailey Han in the corridor, he suddenly stopped in his tracks, and a strange light flashed through his deep eyes. Bailey Han stopped and turned to look at him. What's the matter? Mika Kito didn't want to say much, but when he saw the serious look on Bailey Han's face, he said slowly, You know about how I dealt with Godfather and Su Yunxian some time ago in China, right? It was a standard statement. He didn't doubt Bailey Han's well-informed sources at all. Bailey Han said in a low voice, I've heard about it. Are they related to this matter? Mika Kito's eyes were cold. He said lightly, When I dealt with Su Yunxian, I found out that Su Yunxian has a backer, and her backer is related to the Italian mafia. Bailey Han's eyes darkened. You suspect that Su Yunxian's backer is behind this matter? Mika Kito sneered. After I found out that she has a backer, I've been investigating that person's identity. However, until now, I haven't found out anything, which means that the person is very powerful. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to hide so well in the sphere of influence of the Anya family. Bailey Han frowned. Let me ask you, under what circumstances would you help a woman at the risk of exposing your identity? Mika Kito stared into his eyes, and the corners of his lips curved into a mocking smile. You know very well, don't you? It's either because I love her or because it's profitable. Bailey Han touched his chin and said expressionlessly, Su Yunxian is already dead, but the person behind her is still so ruthless. Is it really because he loves her that he wants to avenge her? Mika Kito said lightly, It seems that you also think that her backer is behind this. Bailey Han didn't deny it. This is only one possibility. The dissidents that foster father mentioned are also very suspicious. Mika Kito looked at him and said, Bailey Han, let's work together to find that person. Bailey Han said lightly, This is also what I want to tell you. Okay. Mika Kito raised his hand, and Bailey Han also raised his hand. Their palms collided, making a crisp sound. There was the sound of the door lock turning, and Xia Dong suddenly stood up. The door opened, and Bailey Han walked in slowly with a warm smile on his face. Hubby. Xia Dong quickly ran over and hugged him tightly. Her eyes were filled with tears. Hubby, this is great. You're still alive. Silly, I still want to be with you until we grow old. How can I die so easily? Bailey Han hugged her tightly, his chin gently rubbing against her hair. I really thought that I would never see you again. When I saw you jump into the river, I wanted to follow you. If it weren't for Cici, I might have really let you go. Song Yunxuan's eyes were filled with tears. Xia Dong choked and couldn't continue. Last time, he was shot in the head to protect her. She had already suffered a lot. This time, When she saw the car explode and they jump into the river, there was only one thought in her mind. If he died, she didn't want to live anymore. Xiaodong, look at me. I won't allow you to think like that. Bailey Han suddenly held her face, forcing her to look directly into his eyes. His face was covered with frost. Ever since they got married, this was the first time he called her by her full name. This was also the first time he showed such an angry expression. Even if I really die, I won't allow you to die with me. You have to live well and raise our child. His sexy thin lips were tightly pursed, and he said word by word, moreover, I won't mind if you remarry. If you're not happy, I won't be at ease even if I die. He held her shoulders tightly. Of course, even if you remarry, you can't forget me. You have to hide me in your heart. Do you understand? Xiaodong's face was full of tears. Silly, how can I bear to let you die with me? My Xia is a strong girl. Even without me, she can live well. Bailey Han's voice softened. He wiped away the tears on her face, and the tenderness in his eyes almost drowned her. Don't say any more, don't say any more. Xiaodong suddenly threw herself into his arms and burst into tears. She clenched her fists and hit his back. You jerk, why are you talking about death? We're not going to die. We're going to grow old together. Bailey Han hugged her tightly. Yes, we'll definitely grow old together. Silly girl, don't cry. Xiaodong cried out all the fear and panic that she had just suffered. She felt much better and gradually stopped sobbing. With his help, she sat on the sofa. He asked gently, Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? She rubbed her eyes in embarrassment. Other than my arm being sore, I don't feel uncomfortable anywhere. Really? Does your abdomen hurt? Worry appeared in his eyes. His palm landed gently on her abdomen, where the surgery was. She hesitated for a moment and said, It hurt a little at first, but it's fine now. No, you have to check it. If it's a wound in your uterus, it'll be serious. He picked her up without any explanation. She was caught off guard and quickly hugged his waist. Hubby, what are you doing? I'm taking you to the hospital for a checkup. I'm really fine. How about you? Are your injuries serious? Hurry up and put me down. I only have superficial wounds. There's no problem at all. Kigai, don't move. Bailey Han patted her but lightly. Be good. Hey, put me down. There are so many people, don't make a fuss. Be good. They didn't see anything. The servants, led by the butler, lowered their heads silently. We really didn't see anything. Welfare, Song Shu 566. Chapter 293. Bailey Han carried Xiaodong and strode to a car. A servant came forward and opened the car door for them. He placed her in the back seat and got in as well. He instructed the chauffeur, drive to the hospital. Yes, Mississippi son-in-law. The car drove all the way to the hospital. After the examination, the hospital said that Xiaodong's wound was recovering well and there were no problems. After coming out of the office, Xiaodong poked Bailey Han's arm in amusement. Are you relieved now? He didn't mind at all and stroked her hair. Yeah, I'm relieved for now. She raised her eyebrows. Why is it temporary? His tone was tender. It takes at least half a year to recover from a C-section. On the surface, it looks like you've recovered, but in reality, the damage to your uterus will take a long time to recover. She hugged him. Hubby, don't worry. I'll be very careful in the future. He kissed her forehead. Honey, you've suffered. She smiled and shook her head. He suddenly sighed. I'm going to suffer too. She didn't understand. He whispered in her ear, We won't be able to sleep together for 100 days. Don't you think it'll be very hard? His hot breath tickled her ear. She coughed embarrassedly. Let's not talk about this here. He could tell that she was uncomfortable. He chuckled softly and didn't continue. He held her waist. Honey, are you tired? Let's go home and rest for a while. Xiaodong frowned. Hubby, I keep feeling that something's wrong. Bailey Han held back his laughter. What's wrong? Xiaodong looked at herself and then at him. Her eyes suddenly widened and she cried out, Hi. Where's Hi? Bailey Han couldn't hold it in anymore and laughed loudly. He hugged her and kissed her face. Honey, you're too cute. Why did you only think of Hi now? Oh my God, I'm so incompetent as a mother. I actually forgot about Hi. Boo-hoo. Xia Dong felt so guilty that tears welled up in her eyes. Honey, don't blame yourself. It's all my fault for taking you away so suddenly. Don't worry, Hi is with Godfather. Many people will take care of her. Hubby, I still feel very uncomfortable. How could I forget about Hi? Could it be that she really wasn't a good mother? You're just too tired. Good girl, don't blame yourself anymore. He looked into her eyes seriously. In my eyes, you're the best mother in the world. Hubby, you really know how to comfort me, he ruffled her hair. Let's go to the castle in the afternoon and bring Hi home. We'll have dinner with foster father while we're at it. How about that? She smiled. But after Bailey Han and the others returned safely to the castle, Holly received the news. He threw the eavesdropping device on the marble floor, and the antique vase closest to him also didn't escape the fate of being smashed to pieces. Damn it, they're so tough. Holly gnashed his teeth with hatred, and his eyes were bloodthirsty. Shui Rian couldn't tell whether she was more disappointed or happy. She said lightly, "We didn't kill them this time, but I'm afraid it'll be more difficult in the future." Holly suddenly turned his head and stared at her coldly. Bailey Han didn't die. Shouldn't you be happy? Shui Rian's nails dug into her palms, and a wronged expression appeared on her face. I've already said that I don't care whether he lives or dies. Why don't you believe me? If you hadn't been soft-hearted and wanted to let Xia Dong and her daughter go, they would have been. Are you blaming me? Holly suddenly reached out and pinched her chin with his slender fingers, and a dangerous light flashed in his eyes. Shui Rian gritted her teeth and stubbornly raised her cheek, but there was a faint fear in her eyes. I'm not blaming you. I'm just stating the facts. He stared at her eyes and raised his hand high. She closed her eyes in fear, and he suddenly clenched his hand, pushed her away, and got up. Shui Rian heard the footsteps go away, and she slowly opened her eyes. Her long eyelashes drooped, hiding the complicated emotions in her eyes. The study was a mess. The bookshelves were pushed aside, and books were scattered all over the floor. Shui Rian gently pushed the door open and saw Holly standing by the window with his back to the door. The sunlight shone on him through the white curtains, adding some gentleness to his cold back. She quietly walked behind him, stretched out her hands, and hugged him. He didn't move. Silence. After a long time, she said softly, "Do you still remember the first time we met?" He didn't say anything. She said softly, "At that time, I was still a dancer in the Royal Ballet Troupe. One night, I was on my way home from a party and was blocked by a group of hooligans. It was you, like a god descending from the heavens, who saved me." His body stiffened and he said in a deep voice, "At that time, you were drunk and I sent you home. You hugged me and called out Bailey Han's name." She caressed his waist with both hands and chuckled softly. "Did you fall in love with me long ago? That's why you slept with me while I was drunk. You're my first man." His stiff body slowly relaxed. "You were the one who grabbed my hand and didn't let go." She pouted. "Then you could have rejected me." "I was drunk to begin with." He suddenly turned around and stared into her beautiful eyes, and his lips curled into a naughty smile. "Who asked you to be so beautiful? Anyway, I'm not at a disadvantage." "You're annoying." She pushed him gently. He grabbed her hand and said softly, "Baby, I'm sorry. Sometimes I can't control my emotions." "I know. I've never blamed you." She leaned her head on his chest and said in a lonely voice, "Holly, I only have you. If there comes a day when you don't need me anymore, you must tell me so that I can leave with dignity." He was silent for a long time, so long that her heart turned cold. She slowly left his embrace and turned around. However, he suddenly grabbed her wrist and pulled her back into his embrace. He pressed her head against his chest. "No, that day won't come." She chuckled. "Even if it's a lie, I'm still very happy." He lifted her chin with his slender fingers and saw her tear-stained face. However, There was still a smile on her lips. Thank you. Damn it. His heart actually ached for her. It's not a lie. As soon as he said that, he suddenly bent down and kissed her lips. Like lightning striking the earth, their lips and tongues were intertwined, and they couldn't be separated anymore. She put her hands on his neck. He carried her up and put her on the desk. The two of them kissed passionately. He rubbed her softness through the fabric while her slender fingers unbuckled his belt. His pants slipped. Her slightly cold fingers grasped his burning spot and slid slowly. His fingers also invaded her mysterious realm. Liquid flowed down from the desk. She looked at him seductively and pulled him closer to her. Darling, do you want me? He did as she wished. He held her slender waist and thrust forcefully. The sound of the desk shaking, the sound of bodies colliding, and the sound of lewd panting mixed together. Among the piles of books, they were playing out a primitive scene of love. Ah Bao, who was sent to the hospital's underground parking lot to investigate, quickly reported back to Bailey Han. The surveillance camera in the underground parking lot had been destroyed by a pistol. The security guards rushed to the underground parking lot after the alarm went off and saw a black Audi leaving quickly. Because it was too fast, the security guards didn't see the license plate number clearly. Ah Bao also contacted the maintenance engineer at the Rolls-Royce 4S store and found out that the Rolls-Royce's fault was man-made. The person who did it was very skilled. If it wasn't for the expert, it was basically impossible to tell that it was man-made. Based on this clue, Ah Bao used the information system of the Dark Knight family to investigate more than 20 names. These people were all experts in this field. Then, he investigated more than 20 people one by one to find the suspect. As for Mika Kito, he had personally communicated with the people from the Transportation Bureau to take away the bomb fragments and let the bomb experts in the Dark Knight family study them. The experts spent more than 3 hours to reassemble the fragments. After matching the images of the bomb with the system library, they made a shocking discovery. Young Master Shin, this bomb was developed by the Dark Knight family a few months ago. This type of bomb is usually smuggled to the Middle East countries. It's almost impossible to find it in Italy. Mika Kito's eyes suddenly narrowed and his face darkened. He knew what this meant. It was very likely that this bomb was leaked out from the Dark Knight family. Who was that person? Was it really someone from the Dark Knight family? Mika Kito ordered coldly, "Don't tell anyone about this." "I understand." Just in case, Mika Kito took away all the bombs and erased all the access data. If there was really a traitor in the Dark Knight family, they must be more vigilant to avoid being detected and alerting the enemy. Since the car accident, Mika Kito was very careful when driving. Before getting in the car, Suzuka checked carefully to make sure it was safe before they got in the car. Suzu opened the door of the back seat. Mika Kito didn't get in but said lightly, "I'll drive today." Suzuka's eyes moved. "But your back is injured." He glanced at her and walked to the driver's seat. "That's just a minor injury." She wanted to stop him, but he was already in the driver's seat. He looked at her with his deep eyes. "Get in." She closed the door of the back seat and sat beside him. He was the boss. She didn't dare to let the boss drive for her while she sat in the back seat. Mika Kito didn't say anything. He started the car and drove out of the old castle. The burn on her back was nothing to Vermilion Bird. In addition, she had already applied the ointment, so she wouldn't feel too much pain now. She leaned back in her chair and turned her head to look at the scenery outside the window. Her mood was temporarily soothed. Welfare Hongcha 866. Chapter 294. Mika Kito glanced at Suzuku and said, "I asked you to check Shui Rian's background. How is it going?" Suzaku turned around and glanced at him. "Shui Rian appeared in Rome more than a month ago. I've checked and found that she entered the country from South Korea. I've sent someone to South Korea to investigate, but I haven't received any information yet." She paused and said, "Do you suspect her?" Mika Kito's eyes were deep as he said, "This woman is very evil. I have a feeling that she's hiding something." Suzaku nodded and said, "During my investigation, I found that she's like a mystery. She suddenly appeared with a perfect identity, But other than Holly, she has no other connections. I can't verify her identity. Mika Kito said coldly, she's very good at disguising herself. The phone suddenly rang, and Mika Kito pressed the answer button. It was a call from Jiang Dao. Boss, we found the whereabouts of Raphael's painting, Shao Woman in a Veil. The buyer is Earl Patrick from England. I'm on my way to England now. I think I'll be able to find out the seller's background soon. When Thunder was interrogated, he said that Jamie's men helped him dispose of the painting. If they could find out who sold the painting, they would be able to dig out Jamie's owner, and that person was Su Yunxian's backer. Mika Kito said in a deep voice, let me know immediately if you have any results. The next afternoon, Mika Kito received Jiang Dao's feedback. Earl Patrick had mentioned the seller's name. The seller was called Samuel Victor. According to Earl Patrick's description, Jiang Dao had asked a portrait simulator to draw a portrait of Samuel. After he took a picture, he sent it to Mika Kito through his mobile phone. Mika Kito immediately handed the portrait to Andrus and asked him to find a trustworthy brother to search for this person's whereabouts. Samuel Victor was also known as Franklin Delano. Franklin was a very famous art broker in the black market. All the works of art that passed through his hands were stolen goods. He was very tight-lipped and would not reveal any information about the buyer or seller. On the other side of the phone, Andrew said, Young Master Shin, I've already asked someone to bring Franklin to a secret villa. Are you coming over now? Mika Kito took her coat with one hand and walked out with her phone in the other. Tell me the address. When Mika Kito and Suzuku arrived at the secret villa, Franklin was sitting in the living room with 2 bodyguards beside him. He looked calm, as if he wasn't worried about his situation at all. Mika Kito sat opposite him and waved her hand. The 2 bodyguards left the living room, and Suzaku stood behind him, expressionless like a statue. Franklin, let's talk about the painting Shao Girl in a Scarf. I've told you everything I know. Jamie gave me this painting and asked me to sell it for a good price. He'll give me a 10% commission. Mika Kito said calmly, I want to know who Jamie works for. Franklin shrugged. I don't know. Jamie and I aren't old friends. Is that so? I don't think so. Beiteng Shin's slender fingers tapped on the back of the sofa as his lips curled into a sneer. I've already had someone check your transaction records. Out of every 10 transactions, 4 of them were brought to you by Jamie. The reason why your transaction volume has sharply decreased in the past 2 months is also because of Jamie's disappearance, right? Franklin was a little surprised. How did you find out about this? Mika Kito sneered. The Dark Knight family has never failed to find out what they want to find out. You should know the consequences of going against the Dark Knight family. Aren't you curious about where Jamie went? Franklin's body trembled and his eyes widened. You killed Jamie? Beiteng Shin lazily leaned back, indifferently glanced at him and said, in fact, he bit his tongue to commit suicide. Of course, if you don't want to tell me what you know, you can also choose to die like him. However, if that's the case, you won't be able to enjoy your 30 million worth of assets. Franklin's face changed, but he didn't give in easily. I only made deals with Jamie every time. He didn't mention anything else. Mika Kito sneered. Your memory doesn't seem to be very good. I wonder if you can remember if I invite your new girlfriend over for a cup of coffee. On the way to the villa, Mika Kito had read all of Franklin's information. Franklin's forehead was already sweating. No, this has nothing to do with Irene. Please don't make trouble for her. Beiteng Shin leaned forward and looked into his eyes seriously. He smiled and said, Franklin, let's make a deal. What deal? You just need to tell me who Jamie works for, and I can guarantee the safety of you and your girlfriend. A demon's smile was very seductive, especially when the demon forced a person into a desperate situation and used his smile to seduce people. Very few people could resist that kind of fatal seduction. Franklin hesitated for a moment and finally gave up his professional ethics for his lover. I once saw Jamie standing together with a QXL executive at a cocktail party. They seemed to be very close. Later, I asked him about it, but he denied it, saying that he didn't know any QXL executive. Mika Kito's eyes moved. QXL was the Dark Knight family's business. If he remembered correctly, Holly was now in charge of it, and Shui Ruyan was also working in that company. He asked in a deep voice, "Which executive? What's his name?" QXL's deputy general manager, George. Before that guy joined QXL, he was also in the black market like me. That's why I know him. Bei Tangshan stared into his eyes. After Jamie went missing, did anyone take the initiative to contact you and supply you with goods? Franklin shook his head. You're right. Jamie was a very important source of goods for me. So after he went missing, I suffered a great loss. Mika Kito pursed his lips. It seems that they have abandoned you. Although I don't want to admit it, that's the truth. Franklin shrugged helplessly. That's how it is to be in our line of work. It's very risky. I've already told you everything I know. Now, it's your turn to fulfill your promise. Mika Kito said calmly, "Suzaku, send him out." Suzaku walked to Franklin's side. She took the blindfold from the table and put it on his head. Then, she took his arm and led him out of the living room. Outside the living room, the two bodyguards took Franklin from Suzaku and stuffed him into the car. They slowly drove out of the villa. QXL, did this company have anything to do with Jamie? What secrets were hidden in it? When Suzaku walked into the living room, Mika Kito was still sitting on the sofa. She looked down and tapped her fingers lightly. She seemed to be thinking about something. She pursed her lips and said calmly, "If Jamie is related to QXL, then the most suspicious person is Holly. As the manager of QXL, Holly can't not be involved in this matter." Mika Kito slowly raised her head. Her gaze was deep as she said in a deep voice, "It's too early to make a conclusion. Now, we have to find out the relationship between Jamie and George." Suzaku's lips curved into a mocking smile. "Even if you don't want to listen, I still have to say it. Holly is also a suspect in the car accident. Don't you think that your position in the Dark Knight family is too high and you're putting pressure on him? He has a motive to commit the crime." Mika Kito had considered this, but she didn't want to suspect it. However, where there was power, there was bound to be competition, suppression, and even destruction. When she proposed to help Holly, she had already expected that it would cause animosity between her and Holly. Was the mole in the family really Holly? 2 days later, Mika Kito's men were still following George and paying attention to his movements. Abayo made a breakthrough. In the process of investigating the suspects, he locked onto a man named Peter. Peter used to be a car mechanic. He had been in jail for stealing cars, so he knew cars very well. Abayo pretended to be a customer and offered a high reward for Peter to fix a car so that it wouldn't start properly. Under the temptation of a high reward, Peter readily agreed. After he damaged the car according to the agreement, the engineer who repaired the Rolls-Royce checked the fault of the car and confirmed on the spot that the fault of the two cars was the same. It was definitely done by the same person. Peter realized that he had been set up. He wanted to run away, but 3 men in black suits suddenly rushed over and subdued him. After a round of torture, Peter confessed. "A few days ago, when I was fixing the car, a black Audi suddenly stopped in front of me. The man in the car asked me if I wanted to make a lot of money. I was short of money, so I agreed. The next day, the man told me to wait for him at the designated place with the tools. Then he drove me to the underground parking lot of the hospital and asked me to fix the Ferrari and the Rolls-Royce. He also installed a bomb and a bug under the Ferrari." "Why did you install a bug?" Abayo asked. "I don't know. It was my employer's order. I just followed his orders." "What's his name?" "I don't know. Do you still remember what he looks like?" "I know how to draw. I can draw it for you, but you have to promise me that you won't kill me or hand me over to the police." "Okay, I promise. But if you dare to fool me, I will never let you go." After some negotiation, Peter drew a portrait. He said, "That man looks very cold. He doesn't talk much. He is muscular and has scars on his arms. I suspect that he is a mercenary. Come and see." Hongcha 866. Chapter 295. Peter's portrait was soon sent to Mika Kito. Suzaku took a look at the portrait and frowned. I think I've seen this person somewhere before. Let me think. She held the portrait with both hands and paced around the room with a thoughtful look on her face. Mika Kito did not rush her and waited quietly for her answer. Nearly 3 to 4 minutes later, she suddenly stopped and a trace of surprise flashed through her eyes. I remember now. When I was investigating Shui Rian some time ago, I saw this man opening the car door for her. At that time, his face was tilted to the side, so I couldn't see it clearly. But when he walked to the driver's seat, I saw his face clearly. It's really him. This matter is related to Shui Rian? Mika Kito was shocked. He clenched his fists and stood up with a cold expression. We must inform Bailey Han immediately and alert them. He was worried that Shui Rian would take the opportunity to do something bad to them. Vermilion Bird nodded. Just as she was about to call and tell Bailey Han about this matter, her cell phone suddenly rang. She glanced at the caller ID and quickly picked it up. She didn't know what the other party said, but her face became uglier and uglier. Finally, she revealed an expression of disbelief. What's going on? Mika Kito asked after she ended the call. Suzaku frowned and said concisely, Shui Rian is Su Yunqian. What? Mika Kito was shocked. Something flashed through his mind and he sounded a little anxious. You've already confirmed it? Yes. The person who was sent to South Korea said that he found out that Shui Rian had undergone plastic surgery. He used a lot of methods to find the doctor who did the plastic surgery for her. He also got a photo of her before the surgery from the doctor. The photo showed that Shui Rian and Su Yunqian are the same person. After a moment of shock, Mika Kito quickly calmed down. His handsome face was terrifyingly gloomy. Everything makes sense now. Su Yunqian turned into Shui Rian and appeared here to take revenge. Suzaku analyzed calmly. She couldn't have done it alone. After she entered South Korea, her only contact was Holly. Now, are you still willing to believe that Holly is innocent? Mika Kito clenched his fists. He exuded a cold aura and his eyes were cold. If Holly is really Su Yunqian's backer, I won't go easy on him. If Holly really did something to harm him in Xia, he would never forgive him. After Bailey Han learned about Shui Rian's true identity from the Vermilion Bird, he was also very shocked. His mind quickly flashed with the scenes of every meeting with Shui Rian, her speech, her actions, her expression. In the end, he couldn't help but admit that Su Yunqian's acting was too brilliant. She played Shui Rian so vividly that there were no flaws. After a short moment of shock, Xia Dong began to feel scared. She had thought that Bailey Han and Mika Kito's attitude towards Shui Rian was strange. Now she knew how wrong she was. Hubby, if Su Yunqian did something to Xiao Guai and Hai Hai, I can't imagine it. Don't think too much. Bailey Han hugged her and stroked her back. There was a cold light in his eyes. Now that we know her true identity, we must strip her of her disguise. Didn't Brother Shin say that her bodyguard bribed Peter to plant a bomb and a bug under the car? I think it's very strange. She should hate me the most. If that's the case, why did she wait until Hai Hai and I escaped from the car before detonating the bomb? Countless thoughts flashed through Bailey Han's mind. He stared into her eyes, wanting to say something, but hesitated. Hubby, do you know something? He moved the corners of his lips and said in a low voice, Honey, I suspect that Holly is Su Yunqian's backer. I once heard from Mika Kito that Su Yunqian has someone behind her, and the person behind her is the Italian mafia. Now, all of this points to Holly. Xia Dong widened her eyes in disbelief. She grabbed his arm tightly and murmured, Impossible. Holly is very good to me and the children. Bailey Han held her shoulders tightly. Honey, the car exploded after you escaped because Holly couldn't bear to kill you and Hai Hai. Xia Dong shook her head and said anxiously, No, he's also very close to Brother Shin. Holly hates Mika Kito too much. How could they be close? It's just a show. How could that be? Because Mika Kito has threatened Holly's position. Godfather once said that he would announce a major decision at Hai Hai's 1-month-old party. This major decision has to do with Holly inheriting the family business. If Holly can't correct his mistakes within 3 years, he will be stripped of his right to inherit the family business, and Mika Kito will replace him to inherit the family business. Xia Dong's voice was dry. How did you know? Bailey Han said softly, Godfather once asked for my opinion on this matter. At that time, I suggested that Holly might fall out with Mika Kito because of this matter. Godfather said that this is also a test for Mika Kito and Holly to see which one of them is qualified to inherit the family business. Xia Dong's eyes were covered with a layer of mist. She bit her lip. I still don't believe it. Although Holly is playful, and unrestrained, he has always been very good to us. When I didn't know a word of Italian, he taught me patiently and even taught me how to ride a horse. As she spoke, tears fell from her eyes. On my birthday, he gave me a horse. He named the horse Princess. He said that the horse was just like me, the princess of the Dark Knight family. She cried and shook her head. I don't believe it. I don't believe that such a gentle person would do such a cruel thing for power. Bailey Han hugged her tightly and stopped trying to persuade her. He knew how she felt now. She had already regarded Holly as her brother. She didn't believe that her brother would do anything to hurt her or the other family members. It was just like when he found out about Su Yunqian's true colors. He also found it hard to believe. After coaxing her to sleep, Bailey Han went to the study and called Mika Kito to discuss with him how to find evidence to expose Holly and Shui Ruian's true colors. George, this chess piece should be put to good use. George was a man in his 40s. He had gray hair and a big belly. He always had a smile on his face. There was a hidden light in his light green eyes, and he was also a lecherous man. This morning he went to the cafe to buy coffee. There was a beautiful Asian woman in front of him in a long red dress. Her long hair fell over her shoulders, and the cleavage on her chest was faintly discernible. She was very attractive. She looked anxious and was negotiating with the clerk. I'm sorry, I really lost my wallet. I work in a company nearby. Can I send the money over later? The clerk said apologetically, I'm sorry, Mississippi. It's against the rules. George squeezed forward. I'll pay the bill for Mississippi, thank you. Thank you so much. Can you give me a business card? I'll pay you back. George took out a business card and handed it to her. He smiled and said, You don't have to pay me back. If you have time, you can buy me a drink. Okay, no problem. The woman smiled and reached out her hand. Hello, Mr. George. My name is Suzaku. George took her hand and smiled. Suzaku, that's a very special name. Are you Asian? Yes, I am. I have something to do, so I'll leave first. Suzaku waved the coffee in her hand. Thank you for the coffee. After work in the evening, George walked out of the QXL building. From afar, he saw a red figure standing next to a marble pillar. Her figure was very attractive. He couldn't help but take a few more glances. He didn't expect that figure to suddenly turn around. He was stunned. It's you. It's me, George. Can I buy you a drink? Suzaku smiled brightly. Her lips curled up seductively. Her face was really beautiful. Her enchanting smile made George dizzy. He walked a few steps forward and stopped beside her. He chuckled and said, Of course, it would be my honor. She tilted her head and winked playfully. Drive your car. Okay. George drove his car over and opened the door for her like a gentleman. She smiled charmingly and sat elegantly in the passenger seat. George looked at her with a lustful gaze. Where are we going? Keynesian Hotel. I heard that the red wine there is very good. She stroked her hair elegantly and unconsciously licked her red lips. She was seductive and seductive. George's eyes were about to burst into flames. He couldn't help but glance at her chest. Without the cover of her hair, the cleavage was even more obvious. He took her words and actions as sexual innuendo and was overjoyed. He stepped on the accelerator and the car sped towards the Keynesian Hotel. At the same time, Mika Kito called Holly. Holly, there's something I think I have to tell you. Holly was about to have dinner with Shui Ruian. When he received the call, he put down his knife and fork and leaned back. He said slowly, Shin, what's the matter? Have you found out who caused the car accident? Mika Kito said in a deep voice, No, I'm still investigating the car accident. However, during the investigation, I found that QXL's deputy general manager, George, used his position to steal the company's auction items and sell them to the black market. Holly's eyes narrowed. He exclaimed in disbelief, George? He really did such a thing? He also said that he wasn't the only one who did this in QXL. There were others like him who sold the auction items. My subordinate, Suza, is talking to him now. I hope he will confess to the others. Attention, Song Shu 566. Chapter 296. Holly tightened his grip on the phone. His eyes were cold and his voice was filled with anger. Damn it! How could George do such a thing? Is Suzaku negotiating with him now? Or are they? I want to ask him face to face why he betrayed the family and the company. He's at the Keynesian Hotel. Holly, I hope you can calm down. Don't be impulsive. Suzaku had a hard time convincing him to confess. I know. Don't worry, Shin. Thank you for telling me this. I won't let anyone who betrays the company off. After ending the call, Holly hung up the phone angrily. Damn it. I knew that bastard George was unreliable. Holly grabbed his coat from the hanger and kissed Shui Rian's forehead. I'm going out. I can't have dinner with you. Shui Rian held his hand worriedly. Darling, don't worry. Maybe Mika Kito is lying to you. She's trying to make you panic. Holly said coldly. I have my suspicions too. That's why I have to go there personally to see if George has confessed. Be careful. Shui Rian didn't say anything else and walked him to the door. Holly sped all the way. When he arrived at the hotel, Mika Kito was already standing on the lawn in front of the hotel. He was wearing a black suit and stood tall and straight. Under the bright lights, he was as dazzling as a god in the night. Shin, why are you here? Holly walked quickly to him. Mika Kito smiled. I'm worried that you'll be too impulsive and mess things up. Holly smiled embarrassedly. You know me best. Let's go in. Mika Kito grabbed his arm. Don't be hasty. Suzaku had a hard time convincing George and promised him that she wouldn't hold him responsible. Only then did he agree to tell us the names of the others. If we go in now, he won't be willing to give up the names of the others. Holly tried to suppress the restlessness in his heart and smiled. Then what do you think we should do? Mika Kito pointed at the glass window not far away. Look there. No wonder he was standing here. As long as he turned a little, he could see the hotel lobby through the glass window. Vermilion Bird and George were sitting by the window, facing each other. Although he couldn't hear what they were saying, he could clearly see the serious expressions on their faces. In the hotel lobby, Suzaku and George sat facing each other. George's face was solemn, and even his habitual smile had disappeared. He asked in a deep voice, Who are you? Suzaku said coldly, It doesn't matter who I am. What's important is that my gun is pointed at your chest right now. Let me ask you, did you work with the thieves to steal QXL's auction item and sell it to Franklin through Jamie to make a huge profit? In the past few days of investigation, they found that QXL had been visited by thieves who stole a large number of auction items at once. Under the table, Suza held a gun in one hand and aimed it at George's chest. However, the people standing outside the glass window didn't see it. George's eyes widened. How did you know? Before Jamie died, he already gave you up. He also said that Holly was behind all this. If you're willing to stand up and testify against Holly, I can spare your life. George was silent for a moment. Do you think I'll believe you just because you say that? I won't betray Holly. Suzaku smiled. George, I really admire you. For Holly, you're willing to bear the crime of betraying your family. But you didn't expect that in order to protect yourself, Holly planned to push all the blame to you. No, that's impossible. Suzaku pointed out the window. Look outside. You must know the man standing with Holly. Holly and Mika Kito are here to testify against you. On the other side, Holly was getting impatient. Although he could see their expressions, he couldn't hear their conversation. He shook his head and said, "No, I'd better go in and take a look. I want to hear George say the names of those traitors in person." Mika Kito patted him on the shoulder and smiled. "Holly, when will you change your temper?" George clearly saw Holly's irritable expression and how Mika Kito comforted him. George automatically took it as a form of comfort after shirking responsibility. George began to feel uneasy. If Holly really pushed all the blame to him, he wouldn't be able to forgive himself even if he died 100 or 1,000 times. He took a deep breath and said, "Okay, I agree to tell you everything." Just then, there was a rush of footsteps. Holly's tall figure strode towards them. George's back was to the door, so he didn't see him. Suzuka glanced at Holly out of the corner of her eye. She calmly put away the gun under the table and said, "Are you sure you want to tell me everything?" "Yes, I'm sure." "Very good." These two sentences just happened to fall into Holly's ears. He was already standing by the table, staring at George with an ashen face. "George, how dare you steal the company's collection?" George was shocked. His first reaction was to look at Suzaku. Suzaku shrugged and said, "He has already put the blame on you. Am I right?" George was irritated by her expression and stood up abruptly. "Holly, you know that I was following your orders. Damn it, how dare you frame me? George, you must be tired of living." Holly stared at George coldly. George was too familiar with that gaze. Every time one of Holly's subordinates made a mistake, he would stare at that person with that gaze and make him suffer. George knew very well that Holly was threatening him. But George was tongue-tied and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Mika Kito patted Holly's shoulder and said helplessly, "Holly, I know you. You would never do such a thing. Let's listen to what George has to say first. Don't scare him." Holly's gaze was still locked on George, but his lips curled up into a smile. "Ashen, fortunately you understand me. George, go ahead and explain everything clearly. Don't let anyone misunderstand." Suzuka acted as if she did not see Holly and comforted George softly. "George, don't be afraid. Tell us everything you know. I will help you." George did not dare to say anything when the demon in human skin was standing beside him. He clenched his fists and suddenly stood up. "I'm sorry, everyone. I'm not feeling well. I'll leave first." The fat figure fled as if there was a monster chasing after him. "Hey George." Suzaku wanted to chase after him but was stopped by Mika Kito. "Forget it. Don't force him. Let him calm down. We'll find a chance to ask him tomorrow." Suzaku sighed. "That's the only way." Holly looked apologetic. "I'm sorry. It's all because I was too impulsive." "It's okay." He was hesitant to begin with. "I just have to put in a little more effort." Suzaku smiled thoughtfully. "Boss, Mr. Holly, please continue." She nodded politely and then walked out of the hotel. Holly glanced at her back and turned to look at Mika Kito. He smiled apologetically. "Shen, you won't blame me, right?" "Why would I?" "Don't take it to heart. Suzaku will find a way to pry open George's mouth." Mika Kito smiled. "Do you want to have a drink?" Holly shook his head exaggeratedly. "Forgive me. Ruyan is still waiting for me at home. If she finds out that I'm drunk, she will shut me out." Mika Kito chuckled. "Okay, I won't force you." The two walked out of the hotel, chatting and laughing, and drove away in their respective cars. Mika Kito glanced at Suzuku, who was sitting in the front passenger seat. Suzaku coughed and said, "During my conversation with George, I was sure that Holly had something to do with the resale of the auction items. Unfortunately, George was so close to identifying Holly." Mika Kito pursed her lips and said calmly, "It's okay. At least, we are sure that Holly has something to do with this. I know him. He will never let George go. Send someone to keep an eye on them." Mika Kito was not the only one who knew Holly. George knew him too. George knew that Holly would not let him go, so after he fled home in a panic, he immediately packed his luggage and planned to escape Rome overnight. However, he was still one step too late. The moment he stepped out of the house with his suitcase, the assassin hidden in the dark aimed his gun at him and was about to pull the trigger. Suddenly, The assassin felt a sharp pain in his calf. Something had drilled into his leg. He couldn't stand still, and his body swayed. The bullet that he fired also deviated from its fixed trajectory. "Be careful!" George had just taken 2 steps when someone jumped out of the bushes and pushed him to the ground. George's chubby body fell to the ground, and he grimaced in pain. He thought that he had encountered Holly's assassin and struggled with all his might. The man on top of him said in a low voice, "Don't move. I'm here to protect you." George immediately stopped struggling, and the man dragged him to hide behind the bushes. The assassin sent by Holly dragged his leg, which was shot through by a bullet, and raised his gun to look for traces of George. Blood stained his trousers and left a trail on the ground. "Poochie!" Another bullet shot into his other leg. "Quick, catch him!" 2 black figures suddenly ran out from behind the tree and subdued the assassin in a few moves. The assassin still wanted to struggle, but he was hit on the back of his head and fainted. At this time, Jiang Dao walked over with George. "Get him into the car." "George, you come with me." After getting into the car, George saw the assassin's face in the dim light. He was indeed sent by Holly. The group returned to Mika Kito's place. George didn't hesitate to tell him everything he knew about Holly's crimes after saving his life. Even in his dreams, Holly had never imagined that Bai Tangshan's purpose in luring him to the hotel wasn't to have George identify him on the spot, but to arouse his desire to silence George. Thus, Bai Tangshan was waiting for him. Beauty novel, Hongcha 866. Chapter 297. They had done a good job. They had gotten George's testimony and found out that the unlucky killer was the one who had bribed Peter to destroy the car and plant the bomb in it. The killer was called Mickey, a mercenary. He was also Holly's best bodyguard. It was not hard to explain why Holly would ask him to do the dirty work of silencing people. Mickey had a strong mental fortitude. After he was arrested, he did not say a word, let alone testify against Holly. Suzaku glanced at Mickey, who was imprisoned in the iron cage, and asked Mika Kito's opinion. "Should we torture him?" Bai Tangshan raised his right hand as a cold smile appeared on his face. "There's no need. His existence is already a very good piece of evidence." Even if Mickey did not speak, there were other witnesses. It was enough to bring down Holly. Mika Kito went to the castle and talked to Tomac for more than an hour. He presented all the evidence he had gathered during this period of time to Tomac. Tomac was, after all, someone who had been through a lot. He did not show any signs of shock, nor did he try to find an excuse for Holly. He remained silent with a complicated look in his eyes. There was disappointment, sadness, anger, and a hint of struggle. After a long time, Tomac said slowly, "Tomorrow is Hai's full moon party. We will expose him and Shui Ruyan's true colors then." Mika Kito was stunned. "Godfather, are you sure about this?" Holly was his nephew. Mika Kito felt that it was not easy for him to not cover up for Holly. "Do you think I am too cruel?" Tomac sighed with a sorrowful expression. "Shin, I'm also responsible for Holly's current state. I always felt that he had lost his parents when he was young, so I should let him feel the warmth of a family. That's why I neglected to discipline him and nurtured his bad habits. This time I should also be ruthless. Otherwise, his life will be over." On the way back, Bai Tangshan couldn't help but think about this matter. This was the first time he saw Tomac reveal such a sorrowful expression. Although Tomac was the father of the mafia and was a legend that was unreachable, he was still an ordinary person. He also had family needs. He treated Holly as his own son, so it was no wonder that he would be sad. The 1-month-old banquet was held in the castle of the night. Those who were invited were the heads of the big families, as well as many rich people, politicians, and celebrities. In short, those who could get an invitation were all people with a reputation. The main hall of the castle was magnificent and dazzling. A beautiful melody lingered in the hall. Men in luxurious clothes slowly entered the hall with their female companions. Their every movement showed their noble status. The music suddenly stopped. All the lights converged on the spiral staircase. Everyone's eyes were fixed on it. Tomac stood there in a black tuxedo. There was a gentle smile on his weathered face. He gently knocked on his wine glass and said loudly, "Everyone, thank you for coming to my granddaughter's full moon party. First, let's invite up today's little hero." There was a burst of laughter in the hall. At the entrance of the spiral staircase, a couple walked down side by side. The man was wearing a white tuxedo. He was handsome and tall. He was holding a baby in his arms. The woman was wearing a white evening gown, and she looked quite pretty and elegant. Those who knew her immediately said in a low voice, "That's Tomac's adopted daughter, Xia Dong. The man next to her should be her husband." The couple walked to Tomac's side. Tomac looked sideways at Hai Hai, who was lying in Bailey Han's arms. The little girl was staring at him curiously with a pair of round eyes. He couldn't help laughing. "Everyone, the one in my son-in-law's arms is the second little princess of the Dark Knight family, Bailey Han. Today is Hai Hai's full moon party. Thank you for coming to congratulate her. I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to all my friends." As soon as Tomac finished speaking, his friend, the head of the Phil family, said loudly, "Hey, friends, let's raise our glasses and wish Hai Hai a healthy and happy growth. Congratulations. Congratulations. May little Hai Hai be safe and healthy." Everyone smiled kindly and raised their glasses to congratulate Tomac's family. Tomac and Xia Dong slowly walked into the hall and introduced the guests. Xia Dong and Bailey Han politely greeted them. Little Hai Hai in his arms received many red packets and gifts. The head of the Phil family, Sam, was the most direct. He put a diamond bracelet on little Hai Hai's wrist and pinched Hai Hai's pink cheeks happily. "Little girl, how about you be our little Ian's wife in the future?" Ian was Sam's favorite grandson. He had just turned 2 years old. Tomac deliberately blew his beard and glared. "But Hai Hai is still so young, and you're already planning to kidnap her into your family. Are you declaring war on me? I say, old man, are you itching for a fight with me again? If that's the case, just say it. I'm clearly trying to matchmake 2 children. How did it become kidnapping?" The 2 old urchins bickered happily. Xia Dong held back her laughter and whispered in Bailey Han's ear, "Uncle Sam and Godfather have been old friends for many years. They often do this." Xia, little girl, what are you saying about us?" Sam's white beard curled up and his eyes widened. He looked very funny. "Oh no," Uncle Sam heard it. "I just told Ahan that you always lose when you fight with Godfather." Xia Dong stuck out her tongue playfully. "I'm giving in to him," Sam insisted. Tomac raised his eyebrows proudly. "Thank you so much, old man. You've been giving in to me for more than 30 years. When will you show me your true strength?" Sam shrugged. "We're old friends. Winning or losing isn't important. Friendship is, so I've decided to continue giving in." The 2 of them teased each other for a while more. Sam suddenly said, "Old man, why don't I see Holly and Ashin?" The smile on Tomac's face froze. "They'll be here soon. I have something to announce later." "What is it? Why are you being so mysterious?" Tomac patted him on the shoulder and smiled. "I can't tell you for now. Old man, have a few more drinks. I'll take the 2 of them for a walk." Even though Bailey Han was carrying a child, it couldn't hide his charm. From time to time, young girls who had just experienced their first awakening of love would cast shy glances at him, or beautiful young women would cast scorching glances at him. Xia Dong was slightly jealous. Fortunately, the man beside her had his eyes on her and Hai Hai from beginning to end. It seemed that he didn't notice the gazes of those women at all. Xia Dong looked at his gentle expression when he teased Hai Hai and couldn't help but laugh. Bailey Han turned to look at her. Suddenly, he put an arm around her shoulders and lowered his head to kiss her face. She blushed and whispered, "What are you doing? There are so many people here." He chuckled softly. "I think I can taste something sour." Embarrassed, she pushed him away a little, trying to find a hole to hide in. His laughter was mellow and sexy. It sounded like he was in a good mood. "I like it when you're jealous." Xia Dong felt that she couldn't live any longer. Fortunately, her godfather helped her out. He stood in the middle of the hall, knocked on his wineglass, and said, "Everyone, there's one more thing that I would like to announce to everyone during the 1-month celebration." Everyone's attention was focused on Tomac, including Xia Dong and Bailey Han. The smile on Tomac's face had long disappeared. His expression was solemn as he glanced at everyone in the hall. Finally, his gaze landed on Mika Kito and Holly, who were slowly walking in from the entrance of the hall. Everyone followed his gaze and saw Mika Kito and Holly. They automatically parted to make a path for them. The two of them walked closer and closer until they were surrounded by everyone. Then, they walked to Tomac's side and stood still. Holly's blonde hair was slightly curly, and there was a polite smile on his handsome face. His silver suit made him look tall and slender. On his right, Mika Kito was wearing a black suit. Her facial features were cold and expressionless, and she exuded a dignified and mature charm. Tomac glanced at everyone and said in a deep voice, "I hereby announce that I, Tomac, will sever ties with Holly. All of Holly's assets will belong to the Dark Knight family, and the family has the right to take back all of his assets." The smile on Holly's face froze. He stiffly turned his neck and stared at Tomac in shock. "Uncle, are you kidding?" Tomac said calmly, "This is not a joke. Holly, you know very well what you have done. From this moment on, we are no longer uncle and nephew. Now, please leave." The crowd was in an uproar. They were also stunned. Sam stood up and said sternly, "Tomac, don't be rash. If there's anything, talk to Holly." "There's no need to talk. There's no turning back for this matter. Holly, I hope you can learn from your mistakes and turn over a new leaf." Tomac turned around and no longer looked at Holly. His tone was cold and emotionless. "I don't want to see you again." The crowd whispered and guessed what had happened. All kinds of eyes fell on Holly. Some were sympathetic, some were disdainful, some were suspicious, but most of them were shocked. Holly clenched his fists. He couldn't hear what the people around him were saying. The only thing in his mind was Tomac's words. He wanted to sever ties with him and confiscate all of his assets. No, how could he do this? He was his nephew. Why was he so heartless? Holly's eyes were burning with anger. He stared at Tomac's back. His body was stiff. He stood still and didn't move an inch. Tomac had his back to him and shouted coldly, "Butler, please ask Mr. Holly to leave." Welfare, Shinwoo 799. Chapter 298. Xia Dong was shocked. She could not believe what she had just heard. When the butler led the bodyguards in and grabbed Holly's arms, she finally reacted and rushed out. Bailey Han wanted to hold her back, but she pushed him away forcefully. Xia Dong rushed to Tomac and said anxiously, "Godfather, you can't do this. You can't treat Holly like this." Tomac's Adam's apple bobbed and he said in a low voice, Xia, don't get involved in this matter." "No, Godfather, Holly is your nephew. You can't treat him like this. Is there a misunderstanding?" Xia Dong looked at Mika Kito, who was expressionless and silent. She said anxiously, "Brother Shin, say something and plead for Holly." Mika Kito's thin lips moved slightly and she said indifferently, Xia, since Godfather has decided, let's do as he says." "Mika Kito, you bastard. It's all because of you." Holly could no longer suppress his anger. He kicked away the bodyguards who were holding him and pounced on Mika Kito. "Mika Kito, you hypocritical bastard. I'm going to kill you." Holly's right hand reached for his waist out of habit. Bailey Han's heart tightened and he hurriedly pulled Xia Dong behind him to protect her. The others also stepped back, afraid that Holly would accidentally hurt them. Only Tomac and Mika Kito remained standing in the distance with cold expressions. Damn it. Holly did not touch the pistol, because when the bodyguard approached him, he had already taken away his weapon when he was unprepared. He had already lost his head due to anger. His punches and kicks were filled with fierce killing intent. Bai Tangshan responded calmly and began to fight with him. Mika Kito held his arms and said coldly, "Holly, if you continue to cause trouble, you'll only embarrass yourself more. Bai Tangshan, all of this is your fault. You took away everything that belongs to me. I will not let you off. Holly's eyes were spewing fire, and his killing intent was wreaking havoc. He suddenly attacked and punched Beitangshin's chest. While dodging, Beitangshin kicked sideways, hitting Holly's abdomen. Holly held his abdomen in pain and stared at Beitangshin with eyes filled with hatred. Tomac suddenly shouted, "Enough! Someone, hurry up and drag Holly out of here." 3 or 4 bodyguards rushed up and spent a lot of time subduing Holly, who was trying to resist. The bodyguards dragged Holly out of the hall. Holly did not give up and shouted hysterically, "Uncle, why are you doing this to me?" Tomac's face turned ugly. He clenched his fists tightly and tried to suppress the anger in his heart. This bastard still did not know how to repent. "Why are you doing this to me? Don't you remember what you promised my father? You said that you would take good care of me." Holly was dragged out and kept turning back to roar. Tomac's face was ashen. He suddenly shouted, "Stop." The bodyguards stopped. Holly thought that there was a chance for a turnaround and quickly pleaded, "Uncle, no matter what misunderstanding there is between us, please give me a chance to explain." "Good, very good. I'll give you a chance." Tomac's voice was bone-chilling. "Let me ask you, did you steal QXL's collection and sell it to the black market? Did you get someone to destroy Ahan and Ushin's car and plant a bomb under Ushin's car?" Tomac's continuous questioning was powerful and resonant. It was like a bomb exploding in the empty hall, shocking everyone. Holly denied it. No, I didn't do any of these things. I've been wronged." Tomac's eyes were filled with disappointment. Things had already come to this point, but Holly still refused to admit his mistake. "Ashun, take out the evidence and convince him." Those who attended the banquet in the hall were all influential people. Tomac wanted to save some face for Holly, but since he refused to repent, Tomac wanted to expose him in front of everyone so that he could no longer quibble. Mika Kito was already prepared. She waved her hand, and Abeo and Jiang Dao each walked into the hall with a man in tow. Peter was caught by Abeo, and Michael was caught by Jiang Dao. Peter pointed at Mickey's nose and said, "This is the man who paid me $1 million to destroy 2 cars and install a time bomb under the Ferrari." Tomac said coldly, "Michael is your bodyguard. Weren't you the one who ordered him to do all these?" Holly was about to say something, but George, accompanied by Suzaku, stepped forward. He didn't dare to look directly at Holly's angry eyes and said submissively, "Sir, I can testify that it was Holly who ordered me to sell the company's auction items to the black market. This is my account book for the past few years." George took out a small account book from his chest, bowed, and handed it to Tomac respectfully. Tomac flipped through the account book and stared at Holly coldly. "It's clearly recorded in black and white. What else do you have to say now?" Holly's face turned pale. He gritted his teeth and said, "I admit that I ordered George to do those things, but I didn't order Michael. I had nothing to do with the car explosion." Mika Kito suddenly said, "Do you mean that Michael didn't collude with Peter to kill me and Bailey Han under your order?" "Yes, that's right. I didn't know about it at all. It was Michael's personal behavior," Holly said firmly, pushing all the blame to Michael. Although Mickey was employed by Holly, he had a strong sense of honor. He obeyed all the orders. No matter if it was killing or arson, he would keep his mouth shut. Even if he was tortured, he wouldn't reveal anything about his employer. However, he would never allow others to frame him. Thus, his cold face had a subtle change. Mika Kito noticed it and sneered, "Holly, Michael was very loyal to you. Even after he was caught by us, he didn't say anything bad about you. However, you pushed all the blame to him. You've gone too far. I didn't order Michael to do those things. Why should I admit it? As to whether he did it himself or not, you should ask him." Holly didn't care about Michael's feelings at all. He still insisted that it was all his fault. Mika Kito's deep eyes fell on Michael as she said coldly, "Michael, how long are you going to cover for him? Are you going to atone for his crime? Let me remind you that he has no money now. He may not even be able to pay you your previous employment." Holly said loudly, "Michael, be careful with your words. Don't frame me." Michael couldn't restrain himself anymore. His cold eyes suddenly turned to Holly. "You don't deserve my protection. From this moment on, I'm going to fire you." He ignored Holly's shocked eyes and said sincerely, "I'm sorry. I hid it from everyone. I did follow Holly's orders to instruct Peter to destroy the car and install the bomb." "You're framing me, Uncle. Michael holds a grudge against me. Don't believe what he says." Holly was forced into a corner. His eyes were almost crazy. Michael straightened his chest and raised his head to face everyone's doubts. He said in a deep voice, "I have evidence to prove what I said. The money paid to Peter was transferred to Mr. Holly's account in a Swiss bank. You can check his account details." "I've already checked it." At some point, Mika Keto had a bank statement in his hand. He raised the statement in his hand and said, "You can take a look. On the day of our car accident, there was a remittance of 1 million yuan to Peter's account." Everyone was in an uproar. It was clear who was right and who was wrong. Xiaodong's legs went weak and she almost fell. Bailey Han supported her with one hand. He felt sorry for her. This fool was always so kind and unguarded against people close to her. Mika Keto lowered his eyes and took out another statement. He said slowly, "Holly, I'm very curious about this money. You once transferred 2 million yuan to a plastic surgery hospital in Korea. Why did you do that?" Holly's eyes were red. He said word by word, "This is my private matter. I don't need to explain it to anyone." Mika Keto's lips curled into a mocking smile. "If you don't want to explain, then I'll have to find the answer myself. You transferred the money to a plastic surgery hospital in Korea because the woman you love the most is going to have a plastic surgery in Korea. Her name is—" Holly looked flustered and begged with his eyes. "No, don't say any more. I admit it. I admit it." Bai Tangshin's thin lips were tightly pursed as he looked at the man in front of him who was pleading with him. The scene of them drinking and chatting together appeared in his mind. He had thought that they would become brothers, but Holly had ruthlessly put them to death for the sake of power. Bailey Han saw Mika Keto's hesitation. He suddenly took a step forward and said coldly, "That woman is Su Yunxian. Her name is also Shui Rian. She once tried to kill my wife and used Barit from the Eulis family to deal with the Anya family. No, Shui Rian is not Su Yunxian." Holly was in a sorry state. Suzaku raised a stack of photos for everyone to see clearly. "These are the photos of Su Yunxian before and after her plastic surgery. I also got the testimony of the plastic surgeon from Korea to prove that they are the same person." Holly's and Shui Rian's true faces were revealed in front of everyone, dripping with blood. At this time, Shui Rian, who was also Su Yunxian, was standing at the back of the crowd. She looked at the people who suddenly turned around and looked at her with an indescribable expression. "No, I'm not." All her disguises were removed. She was on the verge of collapse. If she had known this, she wouldn't have come to the full moon banquet with Holly. "No, I'm not. I'm not." Su Yunxian shook her head in panic and turned around to escape. One of the guests blocked her way. She ran in another direction but was stopped by someone again. She was like a rat at the end of her rope, surrounded by everyone who pointed and mocked her. Welfare, Shinwu 799. Chapter 299. Su Yunxian knew that she was done for. Holly was also done for. She slumped to the ground and raised her head to look at the indifferent faces around her. Their disdainful gazes were all too familiar to her. In a city, she was driven into a corner by all the scandals and could only come up with the idea of faking her death, intending to change her appearance and start over again. However, she still fell into the hands of Bai Tangshin. She hated it and could not accept it. Su Yunxian's tears flowed out of her eyes. A beauty was indeed a beauty. Even when she cried, she was still beautiful enough to move people's hearts. However, no one pitied her because everyone had seen through her ugly appearance. The farce ended just like that. Tomac was mentally and physically exhausted. He did not want to look at Holly and Su Yunxian anymore. He turned his back to the crowd and waved his hand. "Drive them out." Holly's originally high-spirited face was stained with a layer of gray. The bodyguards dragged him and Su Yunqian out of the manor's gate. All their bank cards and credit cards were suspended. Their cars and villas were confiscated. They no longer had a place in the company. In an instant, they had gone from being billionaires to penniless paupers. Today was supposed to celebrate Hai-Hai's 1-month-old birthday, but we ended up making a fool of ourselves. Please forgive us. Tomac sincerely apologized to the guests. We're all old friends. You don't have to be so polite. That's right. Please don't take it to heart. Everyone comforted Tomac. Although the banquet was somewhat affected, fortunately, there were some guests who were good at livening up the atmosphere. Everyone soon became lively again. Bailey Han glanced at his listless wife and whispered, "Honey, you're tired. Take Hai-Hai upstairs and rest first." Xia Dong was in no mood to entertain guests because of what happened to Holly. She forced herself to cheer up and bid farewell to Tomac and Mika Keto. She took her daughter from Bailey Han's arms, and the mother and daughter quietly returned to their room through the back stairs. After returning to the room, Xia Dong put the sleeping Hai-Hai into the crib and asked the nanny to take good care of her. Xia Dong unknowingly walked to the observation deck of the castle. Through the binoculars, she looked into the distance and saw Holly and Su Yunqian still hugging each other tightly at the entrance of the manor. After an unknown period of time, they finally let go of each other and left the manor hand in hand. They no longer had a car and were penniless. How were they going to leave this place? Xia Dong's mood was very complicated. She watched for a long time until the two figures completely disappeared from her sight. Then she put down the binoculars and sat on the chair in a daze. Her mind was in a mess. Holly was Su Yunqian's backer. So every time Su Yunqian hurt her, Holly knew about it, right? How could he be so cruel? On one hand, he was very gentle to her. On the other hand, he helped Su Yunqian hurt her. How could he trample on her trust in him? Xia Dong was angry and sad. She didn't know how long she had been sitting on the rooftop. It was only when Bailey Han came up that she found out that the banquet had already ended. Cece had also woken up and the nanny was taking care of her. He thought that she had disappeared and was so anxious that he was sweating profusely as he searched everywhere for her. "I'm sorry, honey." She lay in his arms, feeling very depressed. "Don't do this again in the future. Godfather has asked all the servants to look for you." Bailey Han kissed her forehead. "You've worried me to death. I'm sorry." She blinked and tears fell down. "I'm just not in a good mood. I want to be alone for a while. I know. Faith, don't cry. It's windy here. Let's go back to the room, okay?" His voice was gentle and warm to her hurt heart. His slender fingers wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes. "Do you want to walk by yourself, or do you want me to carry you?" "Carry me." She rubbed her nose, which turned pink. She stretched out her arms as if she was being shameless. "Okay, I'll carry you." He rubbed her hair and turned around. He squatted in front of her and spread his arms behind his back. "Honey, come on." She leaned against his broad back, and he held her legs with both hands. He stood up easily, and with steady steps, he slowly walked down the stairs. She wrapped her arms around his neck and leaned her head on his back. She murmured, "Honey, am I too silly?" Bailey Han's gentle voice was heard. "My wife is not silly. She's just too kind." She hugged him tightly touched. He interrupted without any sense of beauty, "Honey, my neck is about to suffocate." She chuckled and loosened her grip on him. She could not see that the smile on his face was gentle and there was a smile in his eyes. Holly and Su Yunqian had been walking on the road for more than an hour. Su Yunqian's feet were scraped by her high heels. She could not take it anymore. She stopped and bent down to check her injury. Holly turned to look at her. "What's wrong?" She frowned. "My feet are scraped. Let's rest for a while." Holly helped her lean against a big tree by the road. This area was a little desolate. It was very close to the road where Barit had encircled and suppressed Bailey Han. Holly was touched by the scene. He looked at the forest in the distance and said in a desolate tone, "Now I have nothing." Su Yunqian looked at his handsome side profile and an indescribable feeling surged in her heart. She slowly hugged his arm and said gently, You still have me, Holly. Even if the whole world abandons you, I won't abandon you. Holly hugged her tightly. His deep eyes shone with tears. You'll suffer if you follow me. She chuckled. I've already mentally prepared myself. When I had nothing, you were the one who saved me. Now, let's rely on each other. He was very touched, but he had to remind her of the reality. We don't have a single cent on us. We don't have a place to stay tonight either. Don't be afraid. We still have these things. Su Yunqian withdrew from his arms and took off the pearl earrings on her ears, the diamond necklace on her neck, and the ruby bracelet on her wrist. These things should be able to sell for hundreds of thousands. Holly felt sad. He looked down at his wrist, took off the gold watch on his wrist and put it in her hand. And this watch? Actually, we still have a lot of things. Su Yunqian smiled. She didn't know if she was comforting him or herself. Yes, the most expensive thing is you. Holly kissed her forehead gently. Thank you for being willing to accompany me. You're welcome. She chuckled and put all her belongings in his suit pocket. She held his hand. Let's go. We still have to rush back to the city before it gets dark. They couldn't possibly spend the night in the wilderness. Suddenly, a car drove over. Holly waved his arms, hoping that the other party would give them a ride. He didn't expect the other party to have no intention of stopping at all. He stepped on the accelerator and sped past. Another car drove over. Holly shouted, "Please stop the car." The car slowed down. Holly happily held Su Yunqian's hand and ran over. The car window rolled down, and a familiar face popped out. It was the head of the Phil family, Sam. Holly was stunned for a moment, then he smiled. "Uncle Sam, can we take your car back to the city?" "I'm sorry, Holly." Sam rejected him without hesitation. "Uncle Sam, driver, drive." The car sped away. Holly tightened his grip on Su Yunqian's hand, and his expression was terrible. Su Yunqian looked at him worriedly. "Darling, it's okay. We can walk back." Holly shook his head and muttered, "You don't understand. The old man has really made up his mind. Even Sam won't help me. No one else will dare to help me." He was right. They met many guests coming out of the castle along the way. When they saw Holly waving his hand to stop the car, they didn't have any intention of stopping. It was as if they didn't see them. They spent more than an hour and finally reached the suburbs. There were 2 big blisters on Su Yunqian's heels. Holly helped her stand by the roadside. It wasn't easy for them to hail a very old car. The driver was an honest middle-aged man. When he saw that they were dressed extravagantly but looked very haggard, he thought that they had encountered a gangster. Su Yunqian made use of his sympathy to admit that they had encountered a gangster. "Sir, can I trouble you to send us to the city?" "Of course. I happen to be going to the city too." The driver was kind and agreed to take them to the place they had mentioned. There were many antique shops in the area where they got off the car. Su Yunqian asked for Holly's opinion and sold the pair of pearl earrings for 10,000 euros. The two rented an apartment. It wasn't very big. It had 2 bedrooms and 1 living room. However, it was fully furnished and the surrounding environment was good. They couldn't ask for too much when they were short of money. The other jewelry was sold for a total of 500,000 euros, which was not a small amount for the 2 of them. However, the 2 of them were used to living a luxurious life and suddenly became poor. They couldn't adapt for a while and spent money like usual. It wasn't until a week later that they suddenly realized that they only had 300,000 euros left in their savings. Su Yunqian was cooking in an LV dress. She put 2 breakfasts on the table and said, "Darling, we can't just sit around and eat. I'll go out and look for a job." In the past week, Holly went to many companies and submitted a lot of resumes, but they were all rejected. There was no other reason. His job requirements were all at the level of deputy general manager. Finally, a small company was willing to hire him. However, the personnel department received a call from the castle of the night and rejected him again. Holly held the knife and fork with both hands and was silent for a long time. "Darling, I'm sorry. I can't give you anything now." "It doesn't matter." Su Yunqian hugged him from behind and said softly, "In fact, I have nothing to do at home every day. It's better to go out and look for a job. It won't be too boring. Hongcha 866. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.